Welcome back to the Late to the Game podcast, folks. I am your host tonight. This is Cullen, joined along with my two co-hosts, Sean.
What's going on, guys?
Who is our World War II expert here. So this topic today is right up his alley. And Tom.
Hey, guys. What's going on?
All right. So today we're getting into a series here. It's technically a mini-series. Very well known, and it's called Band of Brothers, okay? So, I'm going to just introduce it, give you a little bit of background about it, and a fun fact, and then we'll get into the first 5 episodes. We're doing episodes 1 to 5. It's 10 total. And yeah, so here we go. So, Band of Brothers is a legendary war drama from creators and executive producers Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. Released in 2001, just a few years after their highly successful World War II feature film, Saving Private Ryan.
Yep, which we've all seen.
I was going to say, quick thoughts on Saving Private Ryan. Great movie, great World War II
Fucking
movie.
fantastic.
Probably,
Come on, you can't beat it.
For me, probably top 5 war movies.
Oh, I didn't say top 5 all time in your personal list.
I don't know if it would be all time,
Word.
but definitely in the history war category, definitely top 5.
Yeah.
I'd go as far as to say it's definitely in my top 5. At different points, I had it in my number 1 war movie of all time.
Same.
I think that's very fair, yeah.
I mean, it's the easy pick. It's
Not only just because of how the story is told, but
Coca
also
Pepsi.
Stacked cast.
Cast,
Tom Hanks,
writing,
Vin
direction,
Diesel.
Tom Sizemore.
Tom Sizemore.
Yep, they had to keep him off drugs the whole time he was filming it. Fun fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you told me about that.
Yeah. So anyway, so they had a lot of success with that movie. Lost the Best Picture with some bullshit, actually.
Who
Lost.
won?
It was a movie called Shakespeare in Love. I think Hugh Jackman was in it.
that?
Yeah, it was like one of those like historical like
Some
romance
Oscar bait
pieces.
bullshit.
Yeah, and it won it over Saving Private Ryan.
That's nuts.
Yeah, bullshit. Anyway, so this is a 10 episode. Each one's about an hour miniseries, and it's based on the 1992 nonfiction book of the same title. That was written by, you said Dylan Ambrose, right, Sean?
Stephen Ambrose.
Stephen Ambrose, not Dylan.
Yes.
My fault. Dylan
Dean
Ambrose.
Ambrose.
Someone else. Yeah, I'm confused with the Ambroses.
I think he's a kid.
The Lunatic Fringe, Dean Ambrose.
No, I think Dylan Ambrose is a kid we went to high school with.
Word, he's someone, but it was Stephen Ambrose who wrote it.
Sounds like the Quiet Kid.
He does. It features relatively unknown actors in the lead roles. We've got Damian Lewis, Ron Livingston, Michael Cudlitz, Donnie Wahlberg, and Matthew Settle. Those aren't really your household names, I would say, and those are
Especially in 2001.
Especially in 2001,
Some of those
yeah.
guys we're going to talk about a little bit later end up getting not even big roles, but just roles that ended up doing very well in different TV shows,
Right.
movies, whatever.
Well,
But just like in the beginning in 2001, you're not going to know most of these guys.
yeah.
Well, not only that, too, early 2000s, that was the time when actors were establishing themselves for the first time. For a lot of the big actors we got nowadays.
Even
like
for superhero movies, a lot of genres.
Leonardo DiCaprio, for instance.
Hugh
with
Jackman.
the Titanic and everything. Yeah, Hugh Jackman, all of them.
There's lots of examples of that.
Aaron Eckhart.
We love Aaron Eckhart. And then it also features some big actors who you'll know today who were young and upcoming at the time. Examples: James McAvoy, Tom Hardy, and Michael Fassbender.
Yep.
Those are more household names that you guys would know. Those
all
all
comic
show
book
up.
characters.
Yeah,
All comic book characters nowadays.
true.
Look how far they come.
And all Marvel.
They get that Disney
We're not
money.
even that. They're all Fox Marvel.
They're all
Or Sony, I guess.
Yeah, once you get past that, then it gets complicated. But the bottom line is they're getting that Disney paycheck at the end of the day.
Which is a fire paycheck.
You can
So-
clearly see where they ended up compared to where they started.
Facts. So they're doing something right. So this series focuses in on the brave men of Easy Company. They were the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division, and it focuses on them from their inception in jump training all the way through the end of the war. Takes them through. The series starts in 1942 and then obviously ends in 45 at the end of the war.
Yes, so it's about 3 years.
About 3 years. It takes you through Easy Company. It's a true account based on Ambrose's personal research and recorded interviews with members of Easy Company. So yes, the show, obviously added some stuff for theatrical purposes, but
Which we'll talk about.
Which we'll talk about and we'll point out. But for the most part, it stays true to these real men's account and this real book based on these real men. Major Richard Dick Winters, he's our central character. And it also it features an ensemble cast, a lot of characters, a lot of cast members, and it's cool because each individual episode tends to focus on the story and perspective of one character who tends to narrate and basically tell like their experience through the story. So
yeah, so when we talk about the plot, I'm going to try and focus on the plot for the most part, and these guys are going to jump in with anything they want to talk about. But I'll bring up the main character for the episode, and like Colin said, they normally give they're talking through the whole episode about the events from their perspective.
Mm-hmm. So it's cool. It's cool how it does that, the narration with one character. Anyway, this tells us the true fates of real men who died, suffered serious wounds, as well as their moral, mental, physical, and emotional hurdles that they must overcome are paramount to the story's narrative. It's important to note that. An HBO series first aired, the date is very interesting, September 9th, 2001, 2 days before 9/11. We have this legendary show about, real men in World War II. Just 2 days after, we have another historical event that all of us here lived through. Obviously, we don't have
We were very young.
much
To
of a
propel
memory
us
of
into
it.
a series of other wars.
Exactly. So very interesting, kind of how that timing and how historical events like that just come up. It went on to receive both the Emmy and Golden Globe for Best Miniseries, so it was obviously well loved back in 2001. It's still widely praised and appreciated today. People say, I've heard people even call it, like, even though it's a miniseries, just one of the best written, acted, executed shows of all time. A lot of praise.
100%, which I would honestly agree on. Let me ask you guys, because I have seen the show. This was my 4th time now watching the miniseries. I love this miniseries. It's probably, in my opinion, I don't watch too many miniseries, but it is probably my favorite of all time. So, first takes before we watched it. What did you guys think?
I thought it was interesting. I thought it was well written. I thought that the characters were very easy to get drawn into.
Well, I'm talking about before even
Before,
watching
like
it.
just
your
hearing
thoughts
about it.
When I said to you
well,
guys,
obviously.
Well, so here's the thing. Before we started watching this on
We tried
June
to watch
5th,
it on D-Day.
on the anniversary of when the guys in Easy Company jumped on June 5th, the night of June 5th.
Yes.
Sadly, we did not finish it
Until January.
We didn't finish it till January, but honestly, the Battle of the Bulge was happening in January, so we were kind of
Yeah,
following.
so
That's
it basically was like a full military campaign was
For
what we
us,
were
yeah.
doing
For
in the process.
Yeah.
We went really method with this.
But what was your guys' first take when I said to you guys, I've got an idea. Let's watch Band of Brothers. Let's watch it on the anniversary of D-Day.
Well, just that's initial thoughts.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's coming off the back of Saving Private Ryan, which at the time I obviously had high opinions on, if not the highest opinion on. So obviously, I had a lot to live up to going into it. Obviously, there was a lot of characters that, they went over different aspects of the war and the horrors of it and everything like that within a singular movie. It'd be interesting to see these characters get more time focused on just themselves, with even more time to focus.
I think that's partially why Tom Hanks did it, so that it could be like longer and like you said,
let's put faces to the names,
And I just think it's very interesting how the show starts and you're thinking this is all going to be from the perspective of Winters, the
main character. He's the main character, but he's like kind of an untraditional main character.
But it's very interesting how we'll get to this.
Yeah.
But episode 3 starts and you're not following it from Winters' perspective anymore, and then it continues doing that in other episodes. Winters does become the central character in, I'd say, about half of the episodes, but there's also half that follow other guys, and you see the war from their perspective.
Yeah, but I would argue too, though, that of all the characters, Winters is really the biggest point of view character.
No,
in the
100%.
show.
He is, 100%.
But it is all under when we're going through these episodes, even when they're taking you into the perspective of a different soldier, it feels like you're almost hearing it from Winters' retelling, in a sense.
For the most part, but I think. What I would say is even in the episodes where it's not from Winters' perspective, you're still hearing from whoever's perspective it is how Winters was reacting during that point in time.
Yeah, and well, obviously too, since a lot of the stories end up getting certain details get blurred out by history and everything like that, it can be taken very much as like a secondhand point of view for a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I'll just give my quick initial thoughts. I wasn't super super going in, but I was just Sean recommends it. He's the war guy. I've only heard good things about it, so so let's get into it. I liked how we were trying to do we're trying to do like a nice tribute, trying to watch it on D-Day, trying to have that historical tie to it. And anyway, I would say overall this show is a pretty serious tone. It's got a little bit of lighthearted, some comedy moments here and there. There's one pretty comedic character that we all really fuck with.
We'll
talk about him. But it takes a look at how the war affected each man individually different, and how this conflict affected men in a different way. A fun fact: the name of this series, Band of Brothers, derives from the St. Crispin's Day speech in Shakespeare's famous play Henry V, and it's in a speech delivered by King Henry before the Battle of Agincourt. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that was in the 100 Years' War, which was fought between Britain and France.
Word. Speaking of messing up names, I'm just giving
Agincourt. I feel like I messed that up.
I'm just giving a very quick heads up. There's a lot of French towns in the Netherlands that are going to get talked about in this episode. I'm going to absolutely butcher those names, so I apologize in advance.
We're not French or Dutch.
No.
Yeah.
But
we don't surrender.
Just a quick heads up.
Yes. So that was my fun fact, and obviously the show focuses on the American side of the war, but I would argue it's not an overly pro-American perspective. It really shows the harshness of the war, and you see some other perspectives, which I think it was a cool way to go about it. It's not just like a super pro-American. It's not just putting the Germans in like a overly negative light. It gives you some like background that these were just some guys weren't trying to take over the whole world. They were just
serving their country.
They were just serving their country because they were forced to. Their family wanted to. Multiple other reasons why they were fighting. Right. Wasn't just to be a Hitler Nazi basically. Exactly. So that's all my background for the show. That's my one fun fact, and I think Sean's gonna now lead and get us into episode 1, which is Curry.
Exactly. So episode 1, titled Curry.
Curry.
We'll get to why, but it's basically because of the mountain located on the base that Easy Company was training on.
Made out of curry.
It's not curry. It's Curry.
It's like a Native American.
They had a home field advantage because of that.
But let's jump in. So episode 1 starts on June 4th, 1944, in a Pottery, England. Easy Company is told that inclement weather has caused a 24-hour standby until they will actually make the jump into France. Lieutenant Lewis Nixon and Lieutenant Richard Winters step out later that night as the rest of the company is watching a war movie to discuss what is going on back home in America. We then flash back 2 years earlier to Camp Toccoa, Georgia, which is where the Currahee Mountain was located, as Easy Company's original commanding officer, Captain Herbert Sobel.
Fuck Sobel.
Played by David Schwimmer, inspects the men's weapons, revoking their weekend pass privileges due to minor infractions. So there's a lot of, he'll look at a soldier's rifle, see a little bit of rust on the rifle, weekend pass revoked. He'll look at their bayonet, the bayonet's not sharpened, weekend pass revoked.
Yeah, he's an overly strict leader. He's ruthless at finding faults with his men. He's overly strict.
He's an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's an asshole.
We gotta say, David Schwimmer does a really
good job playing him.
Yeah, no, he does. He definitely does. He gives off that drill sergeant you just want to fucking punch in the teeth.
But that's another thing I was gonna say. He's not being an asshole to be an asshole.
Right.
He's being an asshole because he wants these guys to be ready for the action they're gonna see.
Absolutely, but at the same time too, you can definitely feel he overplays his part.
Yes,
no, definitely.
He's an over asshole. I have a fun fact. So I read that David Schwimmer, who we just mentioned, was actually isolated from his other cast members on set, just as Matt Damon was in Saving Private Ryan during boot camp, because the actors had to undergo some like basic army boot camp in order to be believable for the show, in order to generate a feeling of resentment towards him. So the reactions that you see felt real, just like in Saving Private Ryan.
When they first see him.
Exactly. And that Sobel's, Schwimmer, his character's name is Sobel, he said that his only friend on set was Simon Pegg, another guy who makes an appearance, who plays his right-hand man Evans.
I was going to say that makes
Fun
sense.
fact.
He doesn't make a massive appearance.
He doesn't say any lines, actually.
Simon Pegg?
Yeah.
He does.
He does? I thought
he says like very few, though. It's normally just like, yes, sir, or something like that.
Yeah. He doesn't he doesn't get anything real. But another cool actor guest appearance that we see there.
And who shows up in everything as random soldier with no speaking line.
He shows up in The Boys.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's another comic book character.
Star Wars shows up in episode 7 as a nameless stormtrooper.
But yeah, so Sobel is pretty much bashing them for super minor infractions. Afterwards, Nixon, Winters, and the other men are sentenced to doing physical training sessions, which just obviously angers them. They're wondering why they're just getting basically just ripped upon by their commanding officer. We see many of the men punished and others leave the parachute regiment because of Sobel's treatment. So some of the examples I have is a Private White quitting before they even go out to do their running drills. Donnie Wahlberg's character, Lipton, comes in to talk to him and get him to go out and run drills, and he just quits on the spot. Christensen, played by Michael Fassbender, is forced to redo an entire march. I believe it was a 3-mile march, just for drinking some of the water out of his canteen when they weren't supposed to.
Yeah, so it was a 3-mile march. I have that run, too. He has to go to the tap.
And Walter Smokey Gordon is forced to run to the top of Currahee Mountain and back within 50 minutes. Otherwise, he is kicked out of the regiment. I believe 3 or 4 other men end up doing the march with him just to, it's one of those things where...
Right, he fails, we fail.
Yeah, that
like
was one
Coach
of the,
Carter inspirational.
That was one of the big things they
didn't
show
work
in this
out
episode.
so great in Full Metal Jacket, though.
One of the big things they show in this episode is the men are trying to one-up Sobel by completing these tasks so they can show we are going to be paratroopers.
Yeah, basically like, fuck you, no matter what challenge you're going to give us, we're going to overcome it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you get the sense of brotherhood established early on.
Very early on.
Which is important.
Yeah, because these guys are going, as you'll see as the show goes on, these guys are about to go through hell together, and not just one day of it, a whole
years of it.
Yeah,
years of it.
Whole campaign's worth of it.
Yeah. So, despite his terrible behavior, Sobel is soon commended for his men's performance during training by Colonel Robert F. Sink.
Sink's the man. I love Sink.
He's the commander of the 506.
Yeah, he's got a huge position.
He's leading all of the companies, able through, I believe there's 9 companies. So
I thought it was like A through F.
Yeah, able A through whatever the 9th letter in the alphabet is. I'm off the top of my head. I think it's I.
Yeah.
Sobel also reveals to Winters that he's getting promoted. I believe he's becoming first lieutenant, which basically he is just under Sobel. He's telling all of the lieutenants where their different squads are going to end up going. Sobel tells Winters that he will be tested on his organizational skills as a mess officer for the next 14 days. So it's another way of, even though you're getting promoted, I'm still kind of showing you I'm
going to give you a bitch task here, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And later, Sobel bursts into the mess hall in the middle of a spaghetti lunch that he had planned for the men, saying that they were going to have off for the day, doing no athletics, things like that. And he forces the men to go on another 6-mile up and down Currahee Mountain. And not surprisingly, most of the men end up getting sick. They're vomiting due to the food that they ate. But they begin singing a march song to piss off Sobel. And I think it has a very big impact on him because you can see it in his face. He kind of just stops and he's like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what else I can do to piss these guys off or to make them quit.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a scene where Bull, who becomes one of the main characters, he's asking Winters, because Winters is already from the start much more likable than Sobel. It's pretty obvious all the men like him.
It's very clear that he's the
better.
main character right from the jump.
Yeah, and it's pretty clear that he's just like a likable, fair guy.
Right.
And so Bull asks him, he's like, they're on an unnecessary march. They're the only company that has to march. Mm-hmm. And Bull's like, he's like, permission to speak. And he asks Winters, he's like, why does Captain Sobel hate us? And then Winters, who has a little bit of comedic response to, he goes, he doesn't hate our whole company. He just hates you, Bull. And then he goes, yes,
sir.
Bull just goes, yes, sir. And
then
they get a nice laugh about it.
And they start saying it to other guys. There's like specific guys. I remember they hit one soldier on the back of the head. They're like, Sobel hates you too, bud. So it's just one of those things where they're able to just laugh out of a situation that kind of sucks, but it's because they want to make sure that they're the best.
Facts.
Yeah.
So next, Easy Company is trained on how to exit a C-47 aircraft, which is the main point for the parachute infantry. They're going to be jumping out of planes, going behind enemy lines.
Gotta know how to fucking parachute if you're going to be a parachute company.
I believe they have to do 5 jumps. It might have been 1 less or 1 more to be certified as paratroopers. Afterwards, the men celebrate their triumphs with some beers at a party.
Yes, sir.
And that's where we see one of the first funny moments from our boy Luz, George Luz.
Luz is the fucking
Luz is the man.
He is pretending.
Luz is the
he's
fucking
pretending
dude.
to be a specific general. I forget his name. It's not one of the ones that we know yet. But once they do their jumps, they receive these things called jump wings, which they put on their uniforms. It looks like an eagle. And in this like general's voice, he's like, "Did you not dust your jump wings?" And he's like,
really
instead of calling the
get
Germans
some mannerisms
Germans,
down.
and calling the Germans, he's calling them Huns. Like, it's just like you can already tell
He's taking a piss at a Sobel, right?
He does later. No, but he probably is making fun of Sobel in this case. I just thought it was more of a jest.
Because he sounded like David Schwimmer talking.
He kind of does.
Gloria!
So Colonel Sink is also there. He talks about the brand new concept of parachute infantry and how it's going to be very important for the coming battles that they're going to take place.
Yes, so it's important to note that they need these parachuters not just for this battle, but also later battles to get into Holland. These guys need to know.
They didn't know about this. Too. All they
this
had
was
in
a
their
brand
head
new
is
thing
France.
too. Yeah,
it is, but it wasn't brand new. It was brand new for this war. It was not brand new in 1942.
In general,
the Germans had been doing it since I believe 40 or 41.
Right.
They were kind of the first ones to do it. And the British had started to do it a little bit too. But this is the first time that the Americans
are doing
have a parachute infantry.
Right.
So, next, the program shifts to June 23rd, 1943. We're about a year later at Camp McCall, North Carolina, as Sobel and his men practice further ground drills in the forest. They're taking on another American team in a practice drill of battle. Easy Company struggles during this training after Sobel miscalculates the location of the opposing team, quote-unquote, killing the men. So basically, they're all in a trench waiting for the enemy team to come to them. And instead of doing that, Sobel says, let's charge. They're out in that corner, let's go get them. And they get surprise attacked by the opposite team.
Right. So basically what's shown here is that Sobel did mean well, and he was good at, sort of whipping his men into shape, being that sort of training officer
But he didn't have the head space to do it in battle.
But in the field, he's incompetent.
Yes.
And this is the first time we see it.
I wouldn't even say incompetent. He's just not competent enough to lead men. He could have been a good just overall soldier.
He's got confidence. Yeah, he could be a good soldier or a leader, but he doesn't
have the right to have a big group of men.
Yes.
And tell them where to go. He's going to mess that up.
Facts.
So later we meet Lieutenant Harry Welsh, who ends up being one of the good friends of Nixon and Winters. He's a transfer from the 82nd Airborne. He visits the two of them, revealing that he's heard lots of stories about Sobel getting jumpy in the field. So lots of other units are beginning to see that one of the best companies in the Airborne has a leader that probably won't end up being the best leader in the field. Mm-hmm. Easy's men, we also see, are beginning to doubt Sobel's performance during this time. We then jump again to September 6, 1943, in the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard, as Easy Company loads onto ships heading for Europe. Tensions rise on the ship as the men are discussing Sobel, insulting him, and another, I would say, favorite soldier that gets brought up a lot in the show, Sergeant Wild Bill Garnier, insults Sobel for possibly being Jewish, which one of the Jewish soldiers, Joseph Liebgott, takes very offensively.
Liebgott's the man.
Liebgott's a very, very cool soldier. Mm-hmm. And this ends up leading to a brawl that we see a little bit of.
A little bit of scuffle. A little locker room scuffle. They happen.
Locker room talk.
Yeah. We jump to about 2 weeks later in Aldeburgh, England, as Easy Company continues its training on European soldier, working on hand-to-hand skills. Sobel, again, struggles in the drills. Arriving late in a mission that we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about. So him and Winters are leading two different teams that have to reach a specific objective. I believe the first one there just ends up quote-unquote winning. Sobel's leading his men, and he ends up getting lost, and they're brought upon a fence. While they're there, he tells most of the men to hide behind a large bush, and he's like, we're going to figure out the map, whatever. And while they're hiding out behind the bush, our boy Private Luz is asked if he can do an impression of a leader called Major Horton, who was another one of the big guys in the 101st. Mm-hmm. And
this part is hysterical.
This part is very hysterical because they're like, Luz, how's your Major Horton? And he goes, does a bear crap.
Does a bear crap in the woods?
And they're like, what do you think about scaring Sobel? And it doesn't really show Luz at first. At first, you just see the bush, and you hear, what is the goddamn problem, Captain Sobel? And he convinces Sobel.
At first, Sobel thinks it's someone imitating, but then
one of the other soldiers says to him, he's like, I think that's Major Horton, sir. He might be moving between the ranks.
Which is bullshit. He was not moving between any ranks.
So Luz,
That was a dunderhead.
Luz as Major Horton convinces Sobel to cut the fence, which ends up.
Which is on someone's property, just English person's property. I think.
which
it's just their farm. Don't cut
yeah.
their fucking fence.
No, unless they're like told to by officers.
Yeah, but they weren't.
Which they were.
They weren't. Don't cut this guy's fence.
Yeah, so his cattle end up getting out, and we later find out that Sobel gets in trouble for this.
As you should.
I forget. I don't know this guy's rank, but later William Evans tracks down Winters to hand him a court-martial from Sobel. Because Sobel thinks that all the men are doing this because of Winters, that like they want Winters to be the leader.
No, doesn't Winters like basically like ask Sobel for the court martial?
Well, first he gets handed it, and Winters goes to Sobel and he's like, "Why am I being court-martialed?" And Sobel gives him like some complete BS reason. It's like,
right.
"I told you to meet me at this position at 0800." And Winters is like, "I never received anything." And he's like, "I called the house you're staying in," and Winters is like, "There's no phone." And he's like, "I also sent a runner to give you the letter." And he's like, "I never saw a runner."
Yeah.
So Sobel's just trying to...
Sounds like my average day at work.
Yeah. Miscommunication happens a lot, but Sobel's just bullshitting.
It seems
He's
like it's
trying to get
sabotage.
Yeah,
You didn't get up at 7:59. I set it to 8.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Sobel is like, you can either take, I think it's like a 3-week pass revocation.
Yeah, 2 weekers.
Or the court martial. And he's like, Winters,
and
you stay on the base all the time, just take the pass. But Winters is like, you know what, I've had it with this guy, give me the court martial. He's like, I know I'm gonna win it regardless, just give it to me.
It's still risky to take it.
No, it is.
Court martial is some serious shit.
But with him being court martialed, he's out of the picture Easy Company wise for a little bit, because he has to actually go through the actual court hearing and all that. So with him out of the picture, some of Easy Company's men decide to implement a traitorous plan to get Sobel out of their hair. They compose and sign letters noting that all of them are no longer fit for service under Sobel's rule. And this is all of the sergeants who, I forget the exact word for them. They say it all the time in the show.
Non-commissioned?
Non-commissioned, there you go.
I got it.
They're non-commissioned officers. So they didn't join the army thinking I'm going to be an officer, but they were noticed during training to have
They basically had good leader skills.
And they were promoted on the
naturally.
spot as non-commissioned officers.
Yep.
So all of the NCOs put in this letter, give it to Sink.
Sorry, just one thing. This scene reminded me of kind of like an American Revolution kind of like
it
scene.
Was.
They're like, let's like draft this like thing where we're basically saying like, fuck you, we're not going to like along with the
plan.
With the plan, yeah. Like we're sticking by Winters here. Like you want to throw him out, or you're throwing all of us out, and good luck if you do.
So Sink receives these letters and he's furious. He's stating that
naturally
men have committed an act of mutiny, and he gives out punishments. One of the guys is completely thrown out of the airborne. Another guy is transferred. Another guy is promoted down to demoted down to private. But for the most part, a lot of the guys keep their ranks because they are on the eve of one of the biggest invasions to date
in history. Yeah.
Yeah.
And these men actually risked the death penalty for what they did.
They did. They could have gotten the firing squad.
Yeah, they could have got a death penalty here, but they'd rather risk the death penalty over the fear of being led in the field if Sobel remained head of Easy.
Garnier says
that's insane.
I forget Garnier's full quote, but when they're talking about
that's how incompetent they thought he was.
Yeah, like they knew that they were willing to die in battle, but they were like, all right, we could die by our own hands basically.
That's what
with the death penalty.
Garnier in that scene. Lipton's like, we all need to be 100% positive we're gonna do this, and it's like quiet for like 2 or 3 seconds. It's quiet for about 2 or 3 seconds, and then Garnier goes, "I refuse to follow that man into combat." And it's like, for me, that was like impactful. It's like, damn, these guys like are not gonna follow that guy. That guy is going to get them killed.
Well, and he dishonors his fellow squad mates by being disingenuous with that shit that he pulled with Winters earlier. They can smell it.
Yeah, definitely.
And like I said, they already respect and like Winters more. They're gonna stand by him. Yeah. This is like the ultimate standing by someone.
Yeah,
100%.
Absolutely.
So Sobel is called into Sink because he wants to know like why the men don't like him. Sobel doesn't really give an excuse. He's just like, some of the men I can work with. A lot of them are just under Winters, but I can work with some of them. Sink still commends Sobel for Easy Company's exemplary work. However,
in training.
Yes, in training. Sorry. However, he believes that Sobel could be reassigned to the jump training school for non-infantrymen, so priests, medics,
Doctors,
things like that,
surgeons, chaplains, regular people.
He just thinks his services would be better there. And Sobel, you could see the shock on his face. He's very like, I'm losing Easy Company.
It's a huge demotion.
100%. Well, it is, but it isn't. He's not getting demoted.
He's not getting demoted, but
he's not going to fight.
His current job task is a huge demotion. He was going to be head of Easy, and now he's dealing with regular Englishmen.
He's not leading a company anymore.
Yeah, he's teaching regular people how to jump as like a backup plan, basically.
Yeah. So Sobel doesn't really know what to say. He shakes hand with Sink. And
he has no choice.
We then jump to May 31st, 1944. We're still in England as Easy Company sets up shop in a staging ground preparing for the takeoff to go over to Normandy. Winters informs Lynn Buck Compton how much the men like him, even though he has only been with them for 6 days. And we find out his main reason for that is that Buck is able to just get along with the men because he sits with them, he plays cards with them. He ends up betting money with them, which NCOs and even command, just non-NCOs, like the actual lieutenants and all that, aren't supposed to do. But he says that he's doing it just so he has some way to like get along with the guys.
Yeah, Buck's a very likable guy.
Yeah, he's really down to earth. Winters goes to meet with Sobel's replacement, Thomas Meehan, to discuss the upcoming landings in Normandy near the beaches codenamed Utah and Omaha. So I'll talk a little bit more about the actual D-Day stuff right before episode 2, where D-Day actually begins.
Right, we're still before that.
Yeah, we're still in the training, basically. And Nixon briefs the men on their assignments for D-Day. Later, the men pack up and prepare for their mission, set to leave in a couple of hours. The invasion ends up getting postponed again, returning the narrative to where the episode began on June 4th.
Yep, June 4th.
That night, the men struggled to sleep, especially Garnier, because Garnier had received a letter that day that one of his brothers had just died in Italy.
It's really unfortunate timing, the time they give him this letter.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it kind of sucks for him too, because one of the guys ends up hiding it from him because they want to keep his head on.
They wanted to keep his head right, and it's like there's never really a good time to tell him. It's tough. It's tough.
That was a lose-lose situation.
Yeah. Regardless. But finally, night of June 5th, the planes take off and head towards Normandy, where the nervous men are to make their jumps and begin the Great Crusade.
Yes. So the men are ready. They're I just want to say something that they're given for their trip on the plane. They're giving medicine for travel.
Yes.
For like nauseousness, I guess, that sort of thing.
Has some symptoms though, which we'll get talked about in episode 3 for a specific character.
And then they're also giving crickets, which are noise-making singles, so that they could send out click-clacks, which would let other American friends and groups know that they were American. So they knew that they would kind of get lost and shuffled upon landing in Normandy. So they actually had this really smart idea to use these, basic sound devices.
It was a way for them to call for each other without actually calling once they landed. So the Germans wouldn't know that they were there.
So it was a kind of way you could kind of sneak through, and even if you didn't meet up with your own company, your own guys, at least you could find some fellow Americans.
Yeah, they also
it was smart that they did this.
They also had a few other ways of like contacting each other once they dropped. I don't know if you guys read any of them. One of them is they had a call in return, which was basically one guy would call one sign in American, the other one would have to call a specific word back, because they knew some of the Germans would possibly know American and they wouldn't just be like, oh, it's English. Me. So one of them was the first guy would call Flash, and the other one would have to repeat Thunder. If he didn't, they would assume it was a German.
Gotcha.
But just before we jump into episode 2, because episode 2 is D-Day, a little bit of history on D-Day for if anyone doesn't know or anyone wants to know a little bit.
If anyone doesn't know the basics of D-Day, you fucking should. That's all I'll say. I've seen videos of like them like interviewing people on college campuses.
Yeah, some
they don't know basic
it.
Shit about D-Day.
Yeah,
it's messed up.
It was one of the
honestly, D-Day is like the easiest question. I've heard worse things get fucked up by your average person.
Yeah.
But D-Day...
Schools start teaching D-Day.
Yeah. Well, they should start teaching a lot of things better, but that's besides the point.
But senior year, American history, we learned almost nothing about World War II, which was very surprising for me because we had 2 years of American history.
Yeah.
And you learned like very little about it.
Yeah, but we also didn't have the standard.
That's true.
No, I liked all my history teachers besides my senior year history teacher.
I liked my senior year history teacher, but he focused on other
I think
things.
they just knew that like we all knew about World War II already because World at War came out not too long ago.
That's our base.
At that time, they knew.
But just a little brief history on D-Day. It was
zombies were everywhere.
The largest amphibious invasion to date. It involved, I believe, 14 nations, maybe even more. But the main three were America, the British, and the Canadians.
Yes, we had the Canadians help. Whenever people say Canadians didn't do anything, they helped us on D-Day.
They
give them some respect.
They did.
The Canadians.
Don't forget the Aussies.
There were 5 beaches.
Never lost a war, except for to a bunch of fucking birds.
On. The Canadians had 1 beach to themselves.
By themselves, yeah.
I forget the whole story, but they took it pretty quickly compared to other beaches.
Fire.
It's insane.
Yeah, give them some respect.
But the 5 beaches were...
But not too much.
Were
not too much. For this day, respect.
Yeah, like a standard amount of respect.
Yeah. So the 5 beaches were Utah and Omaha, which were the American beaches. Gold and Juneau, which were the British, I believe. Or I'm sorry, Sword and Juneau, I believe, were the British. If I'm reading it right.
I'm not sure. I only know the American
ones. I'm reading through it really quickly as we go.
Yeah.
Gold and Sword were the British. Juneau was the Canadian beach. And also there were, like we're talking about now, a bunch of airborne units that were sent over the night before to clear specific areas to make sure that when the soldiers landed on the beach, they didn't handle as much resistance as they would have if there were no airborne units. Mm-hmm. And D-Day went on for more than 1 day. Afterwards, there was D-Day +1, +2, and it was as they kept sweeping through France to take France back from the Germans. But let's jump into episode 2, titled The Day of Days.
Day of Days, baby. Infamous day, D-Day.
Yes. So
June 6, 1944. Don't
But
forget.
right now we're on June 5th.
I know what I'm saying. Yes, we are. But I'm saying don't mess up that date ever.
No. So we begin on the C-47s of Easy Company en route to their parachute zones. A few hours later, into the night, they are above France, and German anti-air opens fire on them. It disrupts many of the pilots, and many paratroopers end up totally missing their drop zones, which we'll see a little bit later. Some even landing over 20 kilometers away from their original drop zone. It sometimes even takes a few days for the survivors to rejoin their companies, which we're going to end up talking about in episode 3. Winters ends up landing east of Saint-Mère-Iglees. First Lieutenant Meehan's plane is shot down over Bayville-au-Plain, leaving no survivors. So his entire plane of, I believe it was 12 or 13 men, and also the 2 pilots, no survivors, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately that happened to a lot of planes. A lot of guys never got to touch down on France's
soil.
Yes,
yeah,
that's the word.
So Winters lands. He loses his rifle, which also ended up happening to a lot of soldiers. They were losing gear. The parachutes weren't going off. They were landing in lakes. It was a very carefully organized plan that became a mess.
Yeah, that was executed
very quickly.
Yeah,
due to what the Germans had set up.
Nothing goes according to plan, especially in that time in history.
Yeah. So Winters first links up with a Private John Hall of Able Company. He talks about how him and Winters actually ended up playing basketball together on the 506th basketball team. That's in the show, however. In reality, the first American soldier that Winters ended up linking up with was a supply sergeant from F Company. We don't know his name, but it's just one of those things, again, where the show was trying to have a little bit bigger of an impact. In real life, Winters didn't really know the soldier. They wanted to use one that he actually knew relatively well, a guy they played basketball with. The 2 continue south and are then joined by Garnier, another soldier from Easy Company, Don Malarkey.
Tom loves Malarkey.
Yes, because he reminds him of the kid we went to high school with.
Yes, he does. I'm not going to give you guys the name of that person.
No. But he's joined by those 2 and 2 other men from the 82nd Airborne who also missed their drop zone. Later in that night, the squad stumbles upon a German patrol with a caravan. They're on horses and, I guess, buggies, basically. They didn't really have cars that they were using to transport ammo and things like that to the front. After Winters tries to plan out a pretty well-orchestrated ambush, I would say, Garnier kind of blows their cover, just opens fire without receiving the order, which is where he received the nickname Wild Bill from, due to the impact of hearing that his brother had been killed in Italy, literally the night before.
Yeah, he just wanted some action. He wanted to get some anger out, and he fires up being ordered. He got lucky. The Americans are victorious. They have no one wounded in this, but it could have really fucked them up.
Yeah, and Winters is very mad after this. He says to him,
rightfully
when I give you an order, you follow it.
Yeah,
But
he's right to be mad.
they agree to disagree at this point, and they just move on.
Yeah, Winters basically pushes this under the rug. He could have got probably Garnier in a lot of trouble for this, but he looks out for him. He's like, I'm going to cut him some slack.
Yeah.
Because he's a leader who understands.
Who has empathy, unlike Sobel. Sobel would not give him the benefit of the doubt here. He probably, if it wasn't...
Sobel would court-martial him.
Yeah,
probably. He loves to
probably.
do that.
He's already almost gotten him killed once.
Facts.
So the men march till morning, and Winters and the squad eventually reach a farm where most of Easy's men have ended up basing. Outside of the farm, Malarkey ends up speaking to a German prisoner who we find out is actually from Oregon.
He's an American, yeah.
He's an American whose family answered the German call to return to the fatherland to fight. They obviously returned before America ended up joining the war, so he didn't think he was going to have to end up fighting,
his own country.
His own country,
yeah.
but it's what had to happen.
It's an important point to show you, like I mentioned before, that not all these German soldiers were just hardcore Nazis who wanted to follow Hitler. Like, this guy was just a regular guy. He was trying to serve his original, the country his family came from. Right, yeah, that his parents came from, and that, his father probably was like, this is who you're fighting for. He probably didn't have much of a choice in it. Just a normal guy, that's a lot of just normal guys fought for Germany and every other Axis country.
Yep.
So Malarkey begins to return to Easy Company, and we see Lieutenant Ronald Spears, who at the time is in Dog Company. We'll learn in a little bit of time he ends up joining Easy. He walks up to the German prisoners and offers them cigarettes. Malarkey, as he's running back to Easy, then hears the sound of a Tommy gun going off, which we are to assume that Spears ended up killing the German soldiers. And this will end up being a point of discussion in a later episode where we learn more about Spears.
Yes.
But
it's a debate that we're gonna have later. We know that the Tommy gun, that the only one who had a Tommy gun was at the time was Spears, and what's it called? And that Malarkey definitely heard this.
What didn't we find out that there was a soldier like a turncoat, right? Wasn't there? There was like an American soldier that they got recruited into the Germans.
Well, that's what we're talking. The guy from Oregon.
Yeah, the guy from Oregon.
That guy.
He wasn't an American soldier.
Yeah.
He was a German soldier.
His
100%.
parents were originally from Germany, and they had answered Hitler's call to return to Germany and fight in Germany. But this was before America had joined the war.
Yeah. Okay.
So he didn't think he was going to be fighting his own countrymen.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was lots of real examples of that.
One thing
quite a coincidence.
One thing I will say about the Spears and the prisoners thing, not getting into the debate yet.
Yeah,
but,
we're not going to debate it
one
yet.
thing that I saw as I was looking into this is, which a lot of soldiers agreed on, was that prisoners were pretty difficult to manage, especially during World War II, because they only had two real possibilities that they could do at the time, which was keep them until they were able to hand them over to the military police, which at this time they're behind enemy lines. There's no military police.
Right.
They don't have anyone to hand them over to, or they release them. And if they release them while they're behind enemy lines, that could cause a problem too.
Right.
So it was just something that, as I read, I was like, it's something to think about before you get to the episode where Spears actually talks about it.
Yeah. So and when we see this, we don't really know anything about Spears yet. So we don't really know what to think of him yet, which is obviously done intentionally by the show.
To just build a character that they want you to think about.
Like a character that's almost like a wild card, big question mark hanging around his head.
Right. And the one other thing I will say, as a point of contention, is that the real Dick Winters had heard that this actually happened in Bastogne. So we're not 100% sure that this in real life is where it actually occurred. I also read something that said when interviewers asked Malarkey about this, Malarkey was he was like, it could have happened there, but it also could have happened in Bastogne. All of the fighting kind of just mixed together for me when we were over there. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, something to think about.
So while on the farm, Winters has been ordered to attack a German battery near Menor de Bearcourt, a few kilometers west of Utah Beach. The battery, consisting of 105 guns, is firing on Utah, where the 4th American Infantry Division is landing on the beaches as we speak. So they're getting pounded by artillery fire that the paratroopers have to stop. The guns are protected by MG-42 machine guns and about 50 German soldiers who have built a trench network around the guns to protect them. With great situational intelligence and supported by a 30 cal machine gun and a few of his men, Winters attacks and destroys the guns and then withdraws back to the farm. This was the majority of the end of this episode was Winters, Buck, and a few other guys taking those guns. It's, in my opinion, one of the good first points where you see Winters, like we said, his situational intelligence, how on the spot he's able to react to where the Germans are positioned, things like that. I know they run out of explosives to blow up the guns at one point, so he has the idea to use German grenades, which is a smart idea. So it's one of those things where you see Winters' officer intelligence really pick up.
I would agree. And this is really important. They're able to force the German surrender here, and they actually kill about 20 in the process. And it was very important to in order for the rest of the forces coming in from the other side to keep moving forward. So the paratroopers here, you're seeing this is their first real big moment where they have success, I would say.
There is success, but it's also
they still lose a lot. For sure. That's
there's several soldiers wounded. The one we know most about is Private Robert Popeye Wynn, who will end up coming back in later episodes, as well as two men lose their lives, namely Private Hall, the soldier that Winters first runs into when he lands.
And like we said, Meehan died.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about in the actual, taking of the guns. They only lose two soldiers.
Yes.
But one of them ends up being the first guy that Winters lands with, which is
a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the episode ends with Winters and his men spending the night in Coolville. It's about 5 or 6 kilometers south of Saint Marie du Mont, which is one of the main towns that they had to take. And Colonel Sink's staff is also located there at the time.
So Colonel Sink survives the jump, which is clutch.
Most of the command of the entire 506 ends up surviving it. But the episode ends with Winters and Garnier making amends with each other, saying the good. I think Garnier even cracks a joke. He's talking about in a lot of the episode how Winters is a Quaker and that's why he doesn't drink. And Winters cracks a joke to him at the end. He's like, by the way, Garnier, I'm not a Quaker. And the episode comes to a complete end after Winters and Nixon are talking after seeing the men coming in from the beaches, just discussing how it's just crazy to see someone they actually knew lose their life in Private Hall.
Yeah, it's a real moment. And
Nixon doesn't even really remember him. That's the other interesting thing is Winters is like, we played basketball with him for the 506 team. And Nixon's like, thinking about it, he's like, oh, yeah, you can kind of tell he's
barely remembers it.
Yeah.
And Nixon, as you'll see, he becomes a pretty important character. He's not, technically Winter's right-hand man, but they have that sort of relationship. They run ideas off each other.
So much.
Yeah.
I'll look it up real quick while we're talking, but I believe that Nixon was a member of the 506 Command unit. So he's
definitely high up to a degree, but he's not at the same level as Winters. And I wouldn't even say that he's just one level below him to be his right-hand man. But either way, that's the sort of relationship they have.
Yeah, here, I'm just looking them up real quick.
No worries. There's a lot of trust and just they're boys. They're
so he served at Company Battalion, which is basically where all of the main commanders are leading the rest of the 506 from. So,
gotcha.
But now we're gonna jump into episode 3, titled Karen Pan. It begins on June 8th. We're still in Normandy. As the men of Easy Company, other men that we haven't seen yet, continue to regroup after the actual June 6th D-Day. Some of the lost men come upon Private Albert Blythe, staring off into the sky mindlessly before joining them. Eventually, they regroup with more Easy Company men, and a lot of them start admiring German souvenirs that they were able to find. Some of the guys find watches. I believe Lee finds a Nazi flag. Another guy finds a poncho. So they're kind of, even while they're in the fight, they're trying to grab souvenirs that they can bring home and kind of show off.
Which is relatable. I feel like if I was in the war, I'd definitely want to try to take a cool souvenir. It's kind of like a guy thing.
This is something we can talk about now. One of the big running things through all the episodes that's this is something we have to bring back for our family to see is a German pistol called the Luger.
The Luger.
It gets brought up a lot. They're we got to make sure we bring home at least one Luger that our family can see, if not more.
And Tom has...
5 Lugers.
No, you have some German
6
bullets.
Lugers. No, I do have German bullets. Yeah. No, I have German bullets, and I have a
German bayonet, right?
Is it German? No, I believe it was British.
It was British.
Yeah, so Allies for the win.
But
yeah,
cool.
I'm actually trying to restore that soon. I found it off of Off the beaches, fresh off the beaches.
Found that on Job Find.
No, I'm kidding. I found him. It was like an old antique from a house I was cleaning out for a job.
Yep.
And basically, my plans are to restore it. It's still rusty and everything, but it's definitely seen some action.
Some action for sure.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool.
But anyways, Easy Company heads towards Carentan. It's one of the only places in Normandy that can connect Utah and Omaha Beach so that the Allied armor forces can link up and keep moving inland to France. On their way, the men pass areas that are still ablaze from the previous day's battle, and Blythe is sent forward to find F Company, who is leading in front of Easy, and over the course of the night, they keep losing them in the darkness. After finding them, Blythe links up with Nixon and Winters to tell them that he's found Easy Company, and they discover a fallen German paratrooper bearing an Eidenweih. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I might be butchering that too. But it's basically a flower that is the mark of a true soldier for the Germans. And Nixon talks about it a little bit. I believe that a lot of them have to climb a mountain in Germany to get it, which is supposed to show that mark of like a true soldier, like committed to going and get it and bringing it back.
Word.
We then cut to D-Day +6, so that's June 12th.
Yeah, so the Battle of Carentan took place basically June 6th to 13th.
Yes, it took place over a long, about a week.
About a week, yep.
Easy Company arrives in Carentan. Winter gives instructions for the troops to move out and try and take the town. As they're moving up, the Germans begin firing on them. It's a very intense battle. We see a lot of men injured, a lot of men lose their lives.
The German artillerymen bombarded the area.
100%. There was a lot of machine guns set up in the houses.
There's cannons set up.
Yep.
Yeah.
I believe there were still civilians in the town. I believe at one point Luz kicks open a door and we see a family sitting in there.
There were, yeah. It took place in a French town. Innocent French civilians were caught in the crossfire. Pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, but we also see great
War's
leadership.
hell.
Yeah.
We see great leadership from a lot of the guys. Winters at first. We see great leadership from Lipton, played by Donnie Wahlberg.
Lovely.
You see he's on top of a building, like on the second floor, trying to get the men out of the way from artillery. We do actually end up see Lipton getting hit in the crotch and injured, and he also takes a
doesn't lose anything down there.
Doesn't lose anything, thank God.
Very clutch.
He
has kids later on.
He also takes a large piece of shrapnel across the face, and it gives him like a massive scar.
Badass
from, like,
scar.
Cheek to like forehead.
It's a badass scar.
He's got an Anakin scar.
He's got the Anakin scar.
He's got that Anakin scar.
And Winters ends up taking some shrapnel to the leg, so he goes to see the medic, who is a recurring character, Doc Rowe.
Yes.
As he's in there, we see that Blythe has gone blind out of nowhere.
Blind in quotation marks.
Yeah, in quotation marks.
Yeah.
I forget how Doc Rowe describes it, but he says that it can be like a real thing where like just in the moment a person goes blind and they can't see, and it's not. He's unsure of like when his sight will come back. But after talking with Winters, Winters tries to offer him some encouragement and promises him that he'll get him back home safe to England. And after that, Blythe is able to regain his vision.
Yeah, it's kind of a little unsettling when Blythe regains his vision. Winters is still looking at him like super concerned. Like you can tell this guy isn't mentally stable.
Yeah, but
he's
it's also,
not ready.
He's not ready.
He's not
to
mentally
acute. You can tell Winters cares. Yeah, he doesn't really know how to handle. He knows it's like a delicate situation.
Right.
And it's kind of another lose-lose situation here.
Yeah.
That Winters kind of has to deal
Yeah.
with. It's a tough situation to deal with.
No, for sure. So after the battle, which the Americans end up winning, they take the town. The Germans retreat. Easy Company eats some stale German food as they prepare to move out once again. The men discuss whether the rumor from the previous episode about Lieutenant Spears killing the German prisoners in cold blood is true or not, or if there's other stories. Some of the other stories are that Spears was the only one not to shoot, and the other soldiers with him fired, but that didn't make sense because of, like Cullen said, the Tommy gun, and he was the only one that had it. Another one is that he ended up dumping like 4 magazines worth of ammo into it. There's a lot of just different stories that don't all add up.
It's like the telephone game. There was obviously something that happened with Spears and German prisoners being shot. The details about it are all askewed.
Yeah.
All up in the air.
For sure.
And rumors are obviously going to circulate about it, and they're getting lost in the shuffle of the details. That's the point.
Yep. So Easy Company moves out through the rain towards high ground, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, planning to set up a defensive position. They run into a surprise German attack that runs well into the night, and both sides end up setting up trenches on opposite sides of the field from each other. We can hear the Germans later singing from their trench, and in the American trench, Lieutenant Harry Welsh talks with Blythe about his hysterical blindness, offering some words of advice about handling the game. The game being, fighting battles, being able to, just handle war.
Yeah, you need a lot of mental toughness and fortitude to handle war. That's for fucking sure.
Yeah. And I guess this could be where we talk about...
we can start debating.
Yeah, a little bit of a debate.
All right.
So I forget if he's talking to Harry about this or if he ends up telling Winters.
I thought he talked to Winters.
It might be Winters. But so Blythe says to either Winters or Harry Welsh.
Yeah, that part's not as important.
He ends up saying to them on D-Day, the pills that Cullen was talking about that helped with the air sickness, one of the side effects was you could fall asleep very easily.
Yes. It's a side effect of a lot of pills.
Yeah.
Drowsiness.
So once Blythe lands, he says that he ends up landing in a ditch, and I forget how long he says he sleeps, but it's like a long time. It's almost a day, I feel. I think he says like 18 hours or something.
I think it's like 18 hours. It's almost like he took a couple bars of Xanax.
Yeah.
Just slept.
And
he's off the Erks.
Yeah. And he ends up missing the entire first day of battle.
Unintentionally.
But we also, every time we've seen him so far, he is just unable to fire his weapon.
Yeah, he's got like a looming 1,000-yard stare on him, even though like he really hasn't been a part of the battle yet.
Yeah. So what we wanted to debate is
debate time.
Is Blythe, is this something emotional or mental that's affecting him, or like he says himself, we don't want to say being a bitch because he was a soldier,
no one who's willing to be a soldier is a bitch. 100%. That's not the word we're going to use.
But is he
nobody who's been forced to go to war?
Exactly.
That's what we're saying.
Is he like I said, he almost admits to himself that he's just too afraid.
Right.
So what do you guys think?
Honestly, I'm gonna take the annoying, but I think it's a little bit of both. I think that there obviously is some mental block, something that's not allowing him to get the confidence up to fire his weapon or to fight.
Right.
But there is ways to overcome that. There's definitely some hesitance.
Yeah.
And just scaredness about him that he just doesn't have whatever that mental fortitude, whatever that thing is that you need to tell yourself to get over this, that pretty much the majority of the rest of men are able to tell themselves, hey, we need to get over this, we need to fight for each other, we need to go back home to our families, and we need to help Americans win this fucking war.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like I said, I don't know the mind of a soldier.
Right.
I'm never going to know. I'm not judging this guy. I have respect for this guy, especially after I found out what actually happens to him after. But I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay. Tom, what do you think? To
give my take, I would probably say not in the vein that it's a little bit of both. I don't want to repeat Cullen's answer, but I would say that I would say it almost doesn't even matter, in the sense that this is what my argument would be is whatever happened to Blythe to get him to the point where he could not see or perceived that he could not see what was in front of him.
That'd be scary.
The amount of mental stress and trauma, just whiplash going back and forth, that it has to be so severe that regardless of whether it's him making excuses or if it's legitimate physical symptoms, it seems like his mind has already been pushed to the point where it doesn't seem like it's given him a choice to just man up and fucking suck it up.
Right.
I would argue mental breakage was an almost certainty for him. And on some, I guess my only argument is which is it? Is it mental illness or is it just cowardice?
Right.
But I think those can go hand in hand. I think somebody can become a coward after being brave just from sheer trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I was going to say, I agree with you, honestly. I think a big portion of it is a mental block, but it's definitely cowardice because Blythe admits it. He's telling whoever he's talking to, like I said, we forget.
Doesn't matter.
He straight up says, I fell asleep, and then he just says, he's like, I just couldn't fire my weapon. It's just...
these are just harsh situations that happen in war, and these are the reasons why they show that. It's not a way to, demonize Blythe or
Belittle
to
him.
speak ill of the dead, as we will later find out. He did pass away after his time in the war. But overall, the point of that story, from what I take from it, is really just, this is the kind of shit that happens. And it doesn't matter whether you thought you were ready for it before or after whatever was going on. This is the reality, is this kind of stuff would break people. Yeah. And that was what they were trying to show with
it would break people, even if people were perfectly happy and sane going into the war.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can imagine if maybe Blythe had a rough childhood, maybe had some childhood trauma, maybe he wasn't perfectly mentally sane going into the war.
He could have been in a war before.
I wasn't going to say. I was going to say
he could have been in a war-torn country in his childhood.
We don't know his childhood.
Like, he obviously wasn't drafted because the paratroopers were not drafted.
Right,
they chose to be paratroopers, but. He could have just been trying to make money for his family. The paratroopers ended up making
decent amount of money.
Yeah. They say it in the first episode, but I don't remember with inflation and all that.
Yeah, and as we all know, England took it bad with the Depression and everything, just as much as America.
But he could have just been joining the army, being a paratrooper, just to make money for his family. Like, he might have just not had that soldier mentality, and he didn't realize until he got into the war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing is, like, think about it, this was in the 40s. It's not like they had, like, therapist or like anyone like with you to really talk to. Like, yes, obviously they has a doctor, but the doctor is a fucking physical doctor meant to treat fucking bullet wounds. Like, they didn't have anyone to like help you get through this. Like
emotionally.
What's that?
I'm saying, like, they didn't have anyone to talk to emotionally, like professionally. You know?
Right, exactly. Like, all these guys just kind of had to have, thick skin and, fight their way through it as best as they could. And I don't know, it just makes you realize, like we said, that harshness, the reality of war, because there was obviously more men like Blythe who dealt with similar things, and it's sad to see. It's tough to watch some of the scenes with him. You Tom and I at least developed a sympathy for him.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah. I don't know about Sean.
I did. It's like I said, it was very hard to. I obviously felt bad for the guy, but it was just very hard to see if it was definitely a mental thing once he admitted,
right?
Like, I was being a coward.
No, I get that.
When he said that, I was like, all right, well then it because you never hear him say like it's something mentally, really.
Right, but I'm saying
you
we
hear
as
it
the
from
viewers
everyone
get
else.
it.
You hear it from Harry. You hear it from Doc Rowe talking to Winters. Like, you hear it from everyone else, and you don't hear it from him.
Right.
Yeah, that was our little point of discussion.
That was a debate. We have one more in this.
So back into the episode. While Blythe is talking with Lieutenant Welsh, we see Private Smith in a different area of the trench, being roused from his sleep by Sergeant Talbert. He then is accidentally struck by Smith's bayonet because he wakes up from his sleep not seeing that it's Talbert and thinks he's a German soldier attacking. Blythe struggles to sleep during this whole situation and goes out to investigate what all the noise is. And along the way, he runs into Spears, who speculates to Blythe after talking to him a little bit that Blythe hid on D-Day because he still had hope for surviving. And Spears says that you shouldn't have hope for surviving when you're fighting in a war, which is another thing that, is kind of, I guess, connecting to, is he a coward or not? Yeah.
So it also gives you more of an insight into Spears'
way to fight.
Mentality.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree. The next day, the firefight continues with Easy in their foxholes and the trenches.
We're in the Battle of Bloody Gulch, correct?
Yes, it's I believe like a mile outside of Carrington, maybe a little bit, but the whole.
I heard it's in Deauville.
Couville?
Deauville with the D.
Oh,
that's what I had.
But where it actually is, the whole point of them doing that was so that they could keep holding Carrington. They were just trying to get past Carrington.
Right, yeah.
To defend it from the Germans.
Got you.
Which another thing they say is that the Germans that had retreated from Carrington ended up linking up with this much bigger unit to reattack.
Mm-hmm.
But as Easy is entrenched in their foxholes, the German tanks begin to attack. Blythe ends up mustering up the courage after his talks with the numerous soldiers that he's talked to, and he's talking to Winters at this moment while they're shooting. He begins firing his weapon and ends up hitting a German soldier, but at this one point we don't see if the German actually dies or not. We just see him drop.
Yeah, that's not the point though. He was able to get his courage and his confidence up for that moment to fire.
No, 100%. I agree. Yeah. I'm just saying for something that comes a little bit later, we're unsure if the soldier was killed.
Yes, correct.
American Sherman tanks end up arriving to help the Americans secure the victory.
It's about 2 p.m. that they arrive.
Yes. They defended for a couple of hours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember when the battle started. I believe it was early morning, maybe.
Probably in the morning, yep.
But
it's funny that the battle starts like a work day would start.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not always.
Not always, but that's what happens in war sometimes.
Yep.
Blythe leaves his foxhole trying to locate the corpse of the German that he shot, and he does end up finding him. And this soldier also has that idol Y, the mark of a true soldier, on him. So Blythe takes it from the dead man's uniform and puts it on his own. We then jump to D-Day plus 25 as Blythe volunteers to clear a farmhouse. He's the only man to volunteer for this, and he ends up becoming the lead scout, taking the small group of men down a path towards the farmhouse, and on his way he is shot in the neck by an unseen sniper. They end up trying to treat his wound in the field, but they can't, and they bring him back to a hospital.
Yeah, his wound looks pretty bad on the first look. He's shot in the neck. You probably don't think you have too good of a chance of survival.
Yeah.
Especially at this time.
For sure. But we cut away from that, and we see that after this battle, the rest of Easy Company has returned to England for some rest and relaxation. Their fun is short-lived, however, as the men soon learn from Lipton that they are headed back to France. Before leaving, we see Malarkey driving on a motorcycle to retrieve his uniform from dry cleaning that some of the civilians in England were doing to help out the soldiers.
Very nice of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He is sadly forced, though, to confront all the deaths in his company that they have endured.
As this part's kind of sad.
The women start asking him if he knows specific soldiers and that have not picked up their dry cleaning yet, and a lot of them end up being fallen soldiers, like Lieutenant Meehan, Private Hall, and
the women mean well here. They're doing
this
dry clean for
free,
free,
they don't know what
and then they're just
there.
bringing up all his dead friends, and like it's like they don't mean to be doing that, and he doesn't want to tell them that they're all dead. It's just awkward, sad
thing.
Sucks.
But so he doesn't have to tell them. He ends up taking most of those for the missing soldiers, but he leaves Blythe on the shelf because at this time he does not know if Blythe will end up surviving his wounds or not. The episode ends with us seeing Blythe lying in a hospital bed, looking up at the ceiling, kind of similar to how the episode began with him looking up at the sky when he first landed. A graphic later reveals that Blythe had never recovered from his injuries and died 4 years later. However, Cullen looked into it a little bit more, and we found out that he ended up surviving a lot longer than 4 years.
Yeah, so he actually stayed in the American Army, and he actually ended up dying in Germany, in a German hospital, on December 11th, 1967, after, it doesn't really go into the details of how he died, but it said that he had some discomfort after a commemoration about the Battle of Ardennes in Bastogne, Belgium.
So that's the Battle of the Bulge.
The Battle of the Bulge,
we will talk about next
which we'll talk about later. But anyway, this is, 20 plus years after the Battle of the Bulge actually happened.
Right.
Still fighting in the American Army. For some reason, still in Germany. And, not still in Germany because we were in France the first time. But anyway, he survives 20 plus years later, and obviously somehow was able to get over that, mental thing he was dealing with, and he stayed in the Army. So respect to him. That's all I'll say. Respect to Blythe, for sticking with it.
Yep. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start talking about Operation Market Garden and the invasion of Holland.
Just got done, Chell.
All right, back from the break. We're going to jump into episode 4 and 5 now, which focus on Operation Market Garden. It was an Allied military operation during World War II, fought in the Netherlands. The main point of it was that the Allies wanted to take some bridges that went across the Rhine River into Germany. It was mainly British focused, but the 101st Airborne did take part in it. Like I said, the main point was to take most of the bridges over the Rhine, and most of the fighting took place around the Dutch cities of Eindhoven, and I'm going to butcher this name.
That's a great name.
Nijmegen, along with many other towns. And just a fun fact. Eindhoven, I said that. That was the first one. Yes.
I don't know the other one. I have a question, but you do your fun fact first.
It's actually not really a fun fact. It's kind of just a fact.
It's a depressing fact.
It's a really fucking sad fact.
This was one of the limited times that the Germans used what was considered essentially their nuclear weapon before nuclear weapons, the V2 rocket.
Okay.
That's
one of the very few times they used it.
That's a really sad fact.
And we'll discuss this near the ends of the episodes, but this was sadly one of the failed Allied operations.
Yes.
They were not able to secure Holland.
Liberate Holland.
Liberate
Wasn't that?
Holland.
Yeah, that was
Yes.
the goal objective. Yeah.
I think a lot of it, not to blame the British, but from what I've read in history, a lot of the British armored forces were not it's not
Competent.
Yeah, I would basically say that they were following their orders, but some of the orders were just to station them in the wrong spot, like not the best spot to be.
Okay, I have a question.
They didn't know how to utilize them properly.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So Holland and the Netherlands are the same thing.
Yes.
Why,
I read about that yesterday. While I
Yeah,
was looking
why
up
do
the
they?
facts.
Why is it two different names?
So-
Why is it Holland, the Netherlands, but the people there are Dutch? It's too
So-
confusing.
Europe's
The
fucking
Netherlands-
crazy, dude.
That's what I'm saying,
The
bro. Like it's too
Netherlands
much.
is- Netherlands-
They always got that crap in Europe.
So the Netherlands is
It's
supposed
always
to be
like 5 names
12
for them.
Dutch regions. I don't know too much about them, but it said it was
It
12
was?
Dutch it is still. I would
Oh, it
assume.
is?
I
Okay.
would assume.
No, because I thought it like changed like at one
Oh,
point.
it
Like
could have. I had no clue. I was just looking up 1944.
okay, all right.
But just to make it easier to call instead of the Netherlands or the 12 regions of the Netherlands, whatever,
Yeah,
they started calling
the
it
10
that.
rings.
That's
Okay.
basically what I got from looking it up.
Okay. Word.
But
Also, how did they get to Holland? They didn't walk, as I originally assumed
they
they
jumped.
did. They jumped. They jumped again. That's right. That's right.
Easy Company did.
Easy Company.
There
did.
were ground forces that went in. Like I said, there were some British
Right.
armed tanks, things like that. I believe some American infantry might have taken place. One other thing I'll say about the actual operation was one of the main things that the ground forces had to take was called Hell's Highway. It was the main highway leading through it. And I actually played a video game about it.
Yeah,
called
no,
Brothers in Arms, Hell's Highway.
Yeah, no, Sean showed me that years ago.
It was
Sounds like a Sean game.
It was about
Yeah.
I forget what unit in the 101st.
There's a lot of red
Airborne.
in that game. There's a lot of red.
Yeah, whenever
It's like
you-
blood stain the
It's,
entire
no,
game.
it's not blood, but whenever you get like
like
really
rust.
injured, the screen just turns red, which was interesting.
Yeah.
But
Like in The Outsiders.
yes, but it was
Yeah,
about,
like the Outsiders.
It was about the first unit of the 101st to drop into Holland.
That very-
It was they were called the Pathfinders, so they would basically line up the
like
paths
the
for
Nissan.
planes to drop. Not like the Nissan. They were before the fucking Nissan.
I know.
But let's jump into episode 4 called Replacements. The main character of this is our boy. Well, really, Tom's boy. Tom likes him the most.
Is he your favorite character?
We're talking about Luz, right?
No,
We're
we
not.
are
He
not.
doesn't get
We're
his own
talking
episode.
about Bull.
We're talking about Bull.
Oh, we're talking about Abraham.
Tell people
Abraham's-
why he's Abraham.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, Bull is played by the actor who
I know his name.
I'm blanking on his name. That's why
Michael Cudlitz.
Michael Cudlitz.
Michael Cutlass, who played Abraham in the Walking Dead series that I used to be very big fan of. That guy, in my opinion, fell off in the later seasons, but that's
I think that's most
here
of
and
his
there.
opinion.
But he's an incredible actor. One of my favorite characters on the show when he was around.
Yeah.
his actor's also from our region,
Yeah,
He's
so
from, he's from
New York.
So me being the person I am, I'd never fail to remind Sean that he was Abraham every time.
Every time he
me.
shows up on
And
screen,
Yeah.
he'd be like, "There's Abraham."
Yep, there he is. There's my boy Abraham.
But
Yeah.
the soldier's real name was Bull Randleman. His nickname's Bull because he was one of the bigger guys in Easy Company, and he was a NCO. He was one of the sergeants.
Mm-hmm.
So the episode starts on September 13th, 1944. Easy Company is back in Aldbourne, England, where they were first stationed before D-Day, as Buck and other members of Easy Company relax and play darts in a pub. There's
I'm a big fan of darts. I was playing last night.
But this scene, this is another funny, this is really a Buck scene, but Luz is involved in this scene again.
Of course he is.
They're playing one of the new guys, Babe Heffron. I forget why he calls himself Babe, but I think it's because he picks up a lot of chicks or something like that.
Word.
But he ends up being friends with Garnier. He knew Garnier from, they both lived in the same hometown. But Buck is playing Babe in darts, and he's losing to Babe over and over again. And he's like, "Oh, you want to play for money?" He's like, "Come on, let's play for money, man. Let's play for money." And Babe throws his darts. He does pretty good, but he's not hitting bullseyes. And then Buck goes to throw, and Luz goes, "Oh, Lieutenant, you're not throwing with your right hand. You're a righty, bro." And Buck goes, "Luz, what would I do without you, bud? You helped me remember I'm a righty." And he throws 3 perfect bullseyes and wins all the money. So it's a little bit of a while they're in like the calm, you get to see a funny moment from the guys.
It's cool that he's still a respectable darts player, lefty, even though he's right.
Yeah.
So
while they're at the pub, the older members of Easy Company try to mingle with some of the quiet replacements that have been sent up to Easy Company. These are including Private Miller, played by a young James McAvoy. The new guys are told by Garnier that they should pay attention to Bull, quote-unquote, the smartest man in the company. Tensions flare up between members that were actually in Normandy and the replacements that weren't, until Private Miller makes a symbolic gesture of tearing off his uniform, the award that Easy Company received for their bravery in Normandy. So, like it said, the new guys, Miller and the other guys that he's with, get into an argument with a soldier, I believe his name is Private Cobb,
I have a friend named Cobb.
Okay, it's not Private Cobb.
I know.
Is it that Cobb?
No.
Is it that guy?
No.
Cobb is also Leo's character in Inception.
Yes. But they get in an argument with Private Cobb about their service in the company because they have not done anything yet. They're replacements.
Right. But it's not like their fault that they haven't done anything yet.
No.
Like,
and
it's kind of like that whole like, oh, like these are the freshmen on varsity. Like we kind of gotta like haze them or give them some shit. But it's like,
and I think this was another cool moment though, because while they're arguing with Cobb, Bull sticks up for them, and then there's another guy who ends up being one of my favorite guys that the show shows a lot. His name is Private Webster. Webster says to Cobb, "You didn't even make it out of the plane, Cobb. So why do you deserve the award?" So it's one of those things where Webster's like, listen, just because you're one of the vets doesn't mean...
Just because you were a vet doesn't mean you
prove
really saw
real
Normandy. Combat action or did shit.
And Webster really didn't get to either. I didn't look into this too much, but from...
Yeah, they ridicule him later.
From my knowledge, Webster either got injured very early on in landing, or he didn't make it out of his plane. Either the plane got hit too early or something like that. I'll look into that a little bit later.
We'll get into Webster later, yeah.
But it was just a very interesting thing.
Yeah. And the new recruits were called Greens.
Yes. Because they're supposed to be... That's just like a...
It's just a general term for people that are new.
Even today in war, the new guys, they're considered green.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'd argue, too, I just feel that it's more just frustration coming out when they're talking to these guys.
I think a lot of the vets, it's frustration that they saw all this stuff.
Yeah.
Granted, like I said, Cobb didn't really see too much. But for the guys that did... People that are just being put into the company are being awarded for something that they had to fight through and see.
And they're going to get just as much recognition back home. I think that's kind of the thing. It's kind of like a little bit just like an ego thing, I think, too.
Yeah, somewhat.
Hard times change, man. You know, by the end of a war campaign, you're going to be bitter. You're going to be a little bit more irritated at the guy who didn't have to go through the shit you went through.
Yeah.
It's just
a natural reaction,
yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
So as we go on, it's announced by Lipton, who has now become Easy Company's first sergeant. So he leads all the other sergeants, tells them where their squads are supposed to go. He announces that the unit will move out once again. Easy Company will have to tackle Operation Market Guarding, parachuting into German-occupied Holland to liberate Eindhoven. The next day, Sobel is spotted by Easy Company members as he drives past them, making his return as a fly officer. So what he does is he basically provides them with, if they need jeeps, additional things that have to go on the plane, stuff like that. So it's another one of those promotions that isn't really a promotion. He's kind of just like a I forget what the word would be, but like a supply officer.
He's like the guy in like GTA that you call if you need like a jet or like
he's like, hey, you need some new wheels?
Yeah, he's like that guy, which is like fine, but like he wants better.
But in his Jeep, we also see that Popeye has returned from after getting shot in Normandy, which he got shot in the ass, which is a running theme for some of the men in Easy Company.
As did Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's still a little banged up after getting out of the hospital, but he claims he's ready for the company's jump. While he's talking about this with some of the other men, Sobel immediately goes over to Malarkey, accusing him of swiping an army motorcycle, which, as we talked about in the end of the Normandy arc, he definitely stole a motorcycle.
Did, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, but as we talked about, he did it for kind of a good cause. He did it to go get his uniform, and then he had to take the uniforms of his fallen friends. Meanwhile, the replacements...
All's fair in love and war.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the replacements worry about their upcoming jump. they're trying to copy a lot of the tricks they see the older guys doing, which they had learned from jumping into Normandy. The one that I remember the most is normally when the guys jumped, they kept their rifles or whatever gun they had in a bag that they put around their back.
Smart.
The guys who went to Normandy, they learned once they land, they might not have time to take a bag out from over their back, unzip it, take it out. So instead, they would put it in their parachute, in between themselves and their parachute. So once they land, they could just whip it out, start firing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe another thing they did is a lot of the guys just got rid of the reserve parachute. They were like, either the first parachute's going to work or you're going to hit the ground. It's just one of the things they knew was going to happen.
Don't carry around the extra weight.
Yeah,
Makes
but
sense.
they started doing a lot of these things. I forget. There's one thing that one of the replacements does. That Bull just like comes over to him. It's just one of those things where you see that Bull's like one of the smarter guys in the unit, and he's like, "Stop it! Don't do that. You're gonna break your legs or something like that." He says something along those lines. But then we jump to September 17th. Easy Company begins Market Garden. Once on the ground, the armed units charge towards Eindhoven, where the Dutch townspeople welcome the army as liberators and feed the soldiers. So they start giving them, food, different things, just to thank them for liberating them. Miller is confused as to why the Germans don't seem to be around. They encountered very little resistance. This is known for a lot of the units once they landed. They did not really see a lot of fighting once they first landed. A lot of the fighting didn't come till days later. Seeing no time to celebrate, Nixon, Winters, and the other superior officers try to keep the men moving onwards so they could get towards the river to cross into Germany. Meanwhile, while this is happening, the Dutch resistance is publicly shearing the hair off of any women that have slept with Nazis and are also then trying to sleep with Americans. And this is our second topic of debate.
Big debate.
So, as we were watching this, Cullen was very confused on why their heads were being shaven. So I paused and I said to him, it's because they slept with the Germans and now they were also trying to sleep with the Americans. And Cullen, you can give us your opinion from there.
Yeah, well, so the note that I have written here is that the American men are celebrated, but local Dutch men humiliate the women who had, in quotation marks, friendly relations with the Germans. Okay?
What do you have quoted?
What?
What do you have quoted?
What I've quoted? Oh, friendly relations, right? So,
Friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not friendly relations.
Yes.
He's just a friend.
Yes, exactly. You guys know where I'm getting it. So these
It's
men
a
in
little
the town,
different.
just regular guys, think that these women slept with German soldiers. I don't know. We don't know that for sure.
I would
These
agree
guys
as the
don't
regular
know that
men,
for
but
sure.
they're also resistance fighters. Like they're the closest to soldiers that
Yes.
in their country they can be at the time.
Yes, they are. And anyway, and they decide to just absolutely humiliate these women. And you see the American soldiers come up on these women, and they don't know whether to help them. They don't know whether to agree with these Dutch men. And, it's kind of one of those things that, probably this wouldn't have happened if there wasn't a war going on. Like, war can make you, make these sort of decisions. But I personally thought it was pretty humiliating and just a pretty rude, kind of disingenuous thing to do to these women. And I felt very bad for the women. I almost had a visceral reaction to
Not
seeing
even
this
that,
on screen.
The whole beginning of this topic of discussion was you didn't think that some of the women were sleeping with Germans.
Yeah, I don't know. How did they know that they were sleeping with Germans?
They
they
literally
saw them.
said they were sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah, they
The
saw
women
them.
admitted that? I don't think so.
Some of them could have.
I don't think so.
Well, assumedly some of them did. If they
Yeah.
managed to get everybody in town on board with that idea.
Yeah, this is my thing. I think Tom will agree with me. My whole thing is I don't think these resistance guys would have just done that if it was just she was talking to a German guy once. If they saw one of the women hanging out with a soldier every night, going to the bars that only the Germans were allowed in, because let's keep in mind, the German soldiers were doing that. They were keeping the people of those towns out of specific areas, saying that they could be the only ones in bars, stuff like that. So if they saw one of the women always in a bar with specific German officers, then going back to wherever he was staying at the time, you can put two and two together.
right.
They're
Yeah.
sleeping with the German officer. And
I'm sure there were some that were sleeping with them.
do I think that it was the right thing or the just thing to do? No, I don't think that's something that should be happening to not just women, anyone. I don't think that's the right thing. But it's like you said, it's wartime. These specific Dutch, because now Holland is almost basically the line of war between, you know, Allies and Axis. They're seeing a lot of the things that, you know, they're probably seeing a lot of the bad things that these Germans can do. They're reacting. You know, they're reacting the only way they knew how.
It's just a newer form of tar and feather.
Basically, yeah.
That's really what it is.
What they're doing is, you know, the women's hair is going to grow back. They're they're shaving them, being like, you do not get to sleep with people who treated us so poorly, and then want to.
You don't get to.
Yeah, but
you don't get to two-face your way out of this. You don't get to fucking snake your way through this.
Snake your way through being with the bad guys, and then once the heroes show up, think all is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, in some ways, they're not even like letting these women back into the town. I think it was Webster, some American comes up on these women like outside on the outskirts of the town, and these women are just crying and mortified. And I don't think they're allowed back in their towns, bro. Like, I think it was more serious than just like embarrassing them.
But I think it depended on specific
thing
things.
is that anybody would cry if they were kicked out of their home, shaved, and publicly humiliated.
Yeah, but
that's what I'm saying. Like, where do these women go from that? Like,
no, but that's the thing. It's not to assume their moral character just because of the fact that they cry.
That's what they had to do.
Like, it's tough. Like, some of these women probably never recovered from that.
It's true.
And some of them probably didn't deserve to recover from that.
I don't know if that's up for me to decide.
Tom's saying...
I didn't say all. I said some.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Tom's very bluntly saying, honestly, what could be the truth. Some of these women could have, you know, done it because they thought what the Germans were doing was right. And I'm not saying that was all of them. It obviously wasn't.
Maybe they just wanted to get their skids on, man. They just wanted to get it on.
I'm saying 100%.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm saying, I agree with you. There are 100%.
There's other options.
Yeah. There's some that definitely could have, but I think there's also, you know...
She wanted to get with the bad boy. I get it.
It's a common theme.
There could have been like a small percentage that believed in what the Germans were doing. Yes, and then once the Americans showed up, they were just trying to flip-flop.
My whole thing was, I feel like these Dutch men obviously didn't give these women like a fair trial or like a fair say.
I think we should keep in point too. They weren't just talking about the women, right? Like the men weren't. The men got a different treatment, but the
men were killed.
The men were killed.
Yeah. You got to keep that in mind too.
Yeah. How about some respect for the boys here? The boy Nazi sympathizers that we don't talk about.
But I'm saying the women, but at least the women weren't shot.
Well, I was going to say they probably actually had some more evidence on the guys. They probably had like letters or like they saw them like actually colluding with German soldiers rather than just maybe having sex with German soldiers.
So why is it more likely because they're guys that they were guilty than these girls that were sleeping with German soldiers?
But not even that. What if the women... In addition to sleeping with the Germans, what if they were doing what the men were doing? They were colluding. They were passing notes. You never know.
Yeah.
It's something that they because they didn't have the time to explore it more in depth, they just, we saw what we saw.
I think they did it specifically for that. Is like, there's a whole other story going on here with a whole big issue. But the fact that we can have this debate.
Even in a 10-hour show, they just didn't have the time to go really in depth.
But this happened.
And honestly, I would have been interested.
So. Yeah, me too.
I would have loved to see like a bonus episode, like
further explaining
the background of that event.
That's what I'm saying. I want more details about it. Yeah. Women in Holland, you have my respect. I'll say that.
Well, we can look into this.
I don't know where that came from.
Maybe we'll look into this a little bit more and possibly talk about it on next episode if we actually look into it.
Possibly revisit it. I think we should wrap up this debate though. If anyone's listening, you want to give us your thoughts in the comments. Which side you lean towards more, Sean and Tom?
With assistance from the local resistance, Nixon and Winters are told where to head to find the Germans. The next day, they're passing through Van Gogh's hometown of Nuenen. Easy Company surprised by sniper fire and German tanks. The British tanks arrive on scene, and most of them end up being taken out. Easy Company is forced to retreat, suffering many casualties, and sadly getting little help from their British allies. So this is also kind of where I was getting the idea from Market Garden that a lot of it was, British command just not making right calls.
Yeah, the British tanks assisted. It seemed like they were just a little bit late to the game, though.
It's not even that. It's in this scene, I think it's Sergeant Martin, goes up to one of the tanks and points out there's a German tank behind that building. And instead of, firing on the building or trying to flank around anything else, the British soldier's like, well, the only way I can see if there's a tank there is to drive right in its line of fire. And Martin's like, listen, there could be civilians in that building, but they're German supporters. Like, if you have to, you got to shoot out the building to get the tank. And the British soldier's like, listen, I just got to get in its line of fire to see it. And he gets in its line of fire, German tank takes him out. So, it's just, it was something that the British soldier, he was trying to make the just call, but it unfortunately ended up being the wrong call.
Which happens, not specific to British
commanders
it
happened to everyone.
Decisions.
Happened to everyone, but this is just this is one of the spots in Market Garden where we see it was one of obviously the British. There were obviously American commanders that could have made
similar decisions like that. Yeah,
but while the Americans begin to retreat, Bull is nowhere to be found. On screen, we see that Bull is separated from the men, and the British tank that ends up getting hit by the German tank, continues to drive forward after everyone inside is killed and it's basically taken out of commission. It almost runs over Bull, but Bull is able to hide in a gutter while the Germans retake the town. During this time, Private Miller, James McAvoy, is killed, and an injured Buck has to be carted out on a piece of wood. Buck was apparently a pretty big guy, similar to Bull. So one of the soldiers, even two of the soldiers, wasn't going to be able to just carry him out. He was a heavy guy. So what they did was they found, to me it looked like a door. I'm assuming it was like a piece of a door or something like that. They put Buck on it, and four of the guys pulled the door down the street to get Buck out of there, which I thought was pretty heroic. Bull is forced, after the Germans retake the town, to leave the gutter and hide in a barn, meeting a Dutch farmer and his daughter who end up tending to his wounds. Mainly, he has a big shrapnel wound on his back that the Dutch farmer ends up wrapping up. Bull hears German forces from right outside the barn, and when those soldiers wander in, he is forced to bayonet one who has grown suspicious of the noises in the barn. So this was a pretty interesting fight. Apparently, it happened in real life. Bull was forced to take on this German soldier in the barn, while he was surrounded by a lot of other German soldiers that just didn't know he was there.
It had to be like a silent fight almost.
Well, I don't know if this was true. This was shown in the show, but there were planes flying, I'm assuming Allied planes, flying over the town at the time. So a lot of the noise was drowned out from those planes. I don't know if that ended up happening in real life.
Very possible.
Yeah, it's very possible. Meanwhile, Garnier and several of Bull's squad members, Webster and a lot of the replacements that are with them, head back into town trying to find Bull. By daylight, Bull has left the barn. He finds the deceased Miller and then ends up linking up with his men, who give him a warm welcome. However,
everyone's very excited to see Bull.
They're very hyped.
They were very nervous about him because they knew he got left behind.
They thought he could possibly be dead.
Yeah,
they just weren't sure.
But they knew he was a tough soldier. If anyone can make it out of it, it was Bull.
Yeah, so they end up also, before he links up with the men, he ends up linking up with a recon jeep of two guys that had found him. And the jeep ends up taking him and the rest of the squad back to the base camp. However, there is little time for celebrating as the men have to quick mount up and head back out. Winters bemoans the subsequent bombing of Eindhoven, so the town that they had originally landed in, where they had received little resistance from the Germans, ended up being bombed, and I know a lot of civilians ended up losing their lives, sadly.
Sad.
He also admits to Nixon that he hates that they had to retreat. Nixon responds that they are going to have to find another way into Germany after the failure of Market Garden.
So I have some casualty numbers from Market Garden. Easy alone lost 180 soldiers and had 560 wounded in that. Yep. The British 1st Airborne Division lost 8,000 alone. This was a huge failure for the Allied troops over there.
It was. And the British Airborne were pretty much the spearhead. We talk about, obviously, the 101st because they're what this series is about.
Yeah.
But the British 1st Airborne was basically the spearhead for Market Garden. They were leading the way. So they lost a lot of guys.
They lost a lot. Sad.
So episode 5, titled Crossroads. This is another one that's going to follow Winters. It's still during Market Garden. It's October 17th in Schoenderlaag, Holland, as Winters...
Right.
I'm assuming I said that right. Hopefully I didn't butcher it again. Winters wakes up Nixon to head back to Regiment Command. There they meet Sink, who tells Winters and Nixon that Easy Company needs to rescue 140 British airborne soldiers that were captured during the failed Market Garden. The story I read said they were captured. I don't know if they actually were. In the show, it just says that they were stuck behind enemy lines. Doesn't mean they were captured. They could have been, just
stuck. Yeah,
basically
no, I know
stuck,
what you're saying.
displaced. But heading back to their temporary barracks, Winter is forced to log a report about his unit's October 5th mission, during which he led his squad to a crossroad where many Germans were killed. The next morning, Winters took his men on a bayonet charge across a field. So basically, the crossroads was where the Germans were mainly set up. On one side of the crossroad was the Germans' main base. On the other side was where Winters and his squad had set up the night before. They ran across that field, met no resistance across the field, got up to the crossroads, and on the other side, Winters first sees an unarmed teenage German soldier, and just instinctively he fires at close range, and we see the camera pan, and we see hundreds, maybe not hundreds, but very large amount of German soldiers. I think they say it's a whole division.
Probably like 50 men.
Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
It probably was closer to like 100, 200. I just don't know the exact amount. Once the rest of Winter's men arrive, it essentially becomes a turkey shoot of German soldiers, and they are able to win the battle. Winters learns after capturing most of those prisoners that the men were an SS division, and 22 members of Easy Company end up wounded, but there are no deaths.
That's clutch.
Two noteworthy of the wounded members are Private Webster, who we just talked about from the previous episode, and Joe Liebgott, the Jewish soldier that we talked about in the first episode. Mm-hmm. The wounded are to return to the command post, which is, I believe it was already in Schoenderlacht, the town that they had set up regiment command, and they're supposed to bring the prisoners with them. As they're bringing them back, Winters can see Liebgott's kind of got a more than just a look on his face. He can kind of see that this stain that he's showing towards these SS soldiers. So Winters orders Liebgott to drop all of his ammo. He gives Liebgott one round that he puts in his rifle, because he's worried, obviously, that Liebgott being Jewish and these being SS soldiers who are, some of the worst soldiers that Germany was able to produce, the harshest.
Especially against his
people.
His people.
Yeah. So Winter says, if you shoot one soldier, the rest are going to jump you. So you got that one bullet to bring them back, which I thought just was kind of an interesting thing.
It's smart. It's a smart
move, because he honestly, Liebgott, from what we see in the show, he's a good guy, but when he sees, the harsh reality that a lot of the Germans did, like we said, SS soldiers, things like that, there's like a switch that goes off. Yeah,
for
switch
him.
goes
It's
off.
very personal.
Yeah,
for
sure.
And it's understandable though.
Upon the completion of his report of that battle, Winters is promoted by Sink to battalion executive officer, putting Easy Company in the hands of Lieutenant Frederick Moose Heiliger. So basically, Winters' new role is, instead of just leading Easy, he's going to be leading three companies. He's going to be leading Dog Company, Easy Company, and Fox Company. So while, yes, he's still worried about Easy, he can't just focus on them. He's got two other companies. He's got to make sure they're doing the right things, they're in the right place, things like that. And we see at this point that he's still a little too worried about Easy, and Nixon and Moose are trying to tell him, like, Moose has got this. Just almost take the back seat and let him.
Yeah, he has to delegate a little bit here. But it's hard for him too, obviously, because he has an attachment to the men in Easy. He knows them for like years now, basically.
Yeah, we're going on two years of being together about.
Yeah, so not an easy task.
So Nixon and Moose, we can see, are very amused to find that the promoted Winters now has his own orderly who is doing a lot of the administrative work. I believe Nixon tells him to get him like a coffee and like a bacon, egg, and cheese. Like they're kind of.
He's like his bitch.
Yeah, he's kind of
like
like
his secretary bitch, basically.
But we don't even see them get the sandwiches or any of that. So it's like they're probably just cracking jokes. We don't know.
Maybe not.
But the next day, Moose and his men set out on Operation Pegasus, which is to rescue the 140 British soldiers that we talked about previously, ultimately earning a salute from the Red Berets. So these British Airborne all wore Red Berets. And in the scene, we see a small cameo from Tom Hanks. Which the guys did not believe was true.
Cameo of a cameo.
See is a strong word, Sean.
If you look close enough, he's there.
If you look close enough and you pause
Use
it, you
a
can
magnifying glass.
barely tell he's there.
Use a microscope, set it to 1,000 times.
I'm telling you guys, though, they did this for a reason. I'm pretty sure they didn't want people being like, oh, he's the same British soldier and he's also an American Marine in... not Marine. He's an American Ranger in D-Day for Saving Private Ryan, so they didn't want people to do that. So he was like, I'll stand in the background, I'll be pretty far back, and
it breaks
be
canon.
A minor cameo. Just
it breaks canon.
But
simple as that.
Tom also directed this episode, so it's definitely why he put himself in it.
Probably.
Yeah.
But it's a funny cameo. So next, we cut to October 31st, Halloween, in Driel, Holland. Winters gives counsel to Moose while walking along a train track. However, an American sentry who is not able to identify the two of them actually ends up shooting Moose. I believe he ends up surviving. He just has to go to a hospital, but he's unable to lead Easy.
Yeah, it's super sudden, just super unfortunate for Moose. Like, seemed like he had control of things. He's just taking a walk with Winters, and he just gets.
I mean, also I didn't know anything about it beforehand. I was assuming, this is going to be the new leader of Easy for a while, and we see him for about 15-20 minutes, and he's taken out of commission. And this is also, we see a very emotional scene from Doc Rowe in this as he's treating Moose. You see how medics can take war very seriously because they forget to mark Moose with a specific sign showing how much morphine they've given him and stuff like that. And Doc Rowe takes that very personally because they're not thinking about giving them the correct amount of medicine and stuff during war, which is another thing that could kill a man. So it was just an interesting take. We then jump to December 10th in Mourmelon-le-Grand, France. Winters receives a letter from Moose, who is struggling with his recovery. Nixon insists that Winters takes a 48-hour pass to go to Paris to, just think about things, kind of take a step back, cool his head. There, Winters continues to be haunted by the memories of that young German soldier he shot at the crossroads.
Yeah, the dude was young, 15 maybe, 16.
He could have been a little bit older, but
he looked pretty young. I think that was intentional.
I think that there was a
no. I'm not saying like older, but he's a teenager.
Yeah.
But that's
No, that's young,
and not like an older teenager.
No.
But
it's also the fact of Winters is sitting on a train and he looks back and he sees a young kid that resembles German soldier, and I think that also has a big impact on him. Returning to Mourmelon, Winters finds the troops entranced while watching John Wayne and Marlene Dietrich on screen in Seven Sinners. Probably a great movie. Never seen it.
Never seen anything with John Wayne. I know who he is, though.
Yeah. During the movie, Winters speaks to a despondent Buck about his injuries. Then Easy Company is shocked and upset to learn that they will have to move out to the Ardennes forest to face a massive German counterattack. So real quick before we go into that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Buck in the scene, as it's something we see happening much more in the later episodes. But we see after Buck is injured in Holland that he starts to kind of
lose it a little bit.
I wouldn't even say lose it. It's just that he starts to step away from his shoes for a minute. Like he just you see him like looking straight ahead, and he's just not there.
Yeah.
And it's something you especially see in this point because they're all watching a movie. He's staring at the movie, but when Winters is talking to him, he's talking about something completely different.
Yeah. He's a little bit aloof, is the word I would use.
Yeah, I would agree. Winters tells the new leader of Easy, Lieutenant Norman Dyke, that Easy is in need of winter clothing, ammo, and rations. And real quick about Dyke, you just heard Cullen give a slight sigh about him. Dyke in real life could have been a nice guy, but from what this show depicts, he was
He sucks.
extremely poor leader.
Sucks.
He's never on the front line. In fact, he's never with Easy. Every time they're trying to find him, he's normally back at regiment command. It's just, this is one of those points where the show shows you that even when they have, one of
the chain of command matters.
And even when they have a top leader who's just not up to par, Easy's still able to stick it out.
Yeah.
So, fed up with his administrative work, Winters decides to join Easy Company in Bastogne as the tired men prepare to go once again into battle. Once in Belgium, the soldiers learn that they are to prevent Germans from using the crossroads in Bastogne. Bastogne was a town in the middle of the Ardennes forest, and like we said, it's essentially the crossroads from Germany to get into Belgium, and they were basically trying to hold them off. As Easy members see other troopers retreating from an ambush, one jeepload of ammo is delivered by Lieutenant George C. Rice, played by Jimmy Fallon for some strange reason.
Fucking Jimmy Fallon. I'm not a Jimmy Fallon fan.
Shows up out of nowhere.
Not a fan.
But another interesting
But
thing...
he's fine in the show.
Yeah. Another interesting thing in this moment is as the other troopers are retreating, Easy has to start taking ammo from them because they don't have enough ammo, they don't have enough clothing, and all these soldiers are just completely battered. Some of them are in shock. You could just tell
completely under-equipped.
Yeah. And you could just see the soldiers that are retreating have seen
hell.
And Easy is about to
they're coming back from
it.
an ass whooping, basically.
Yeah. So Winters then watches with appreciation. I just completely read that wrong. Apprehension, as his dispirited charges start their long trek into the woods, and that is where Crossroads ends. So we are going to jump into our wrap-up segments. The first one we have is Cull's sports topic, coming back from
what do we got this week,
our
Colin?
great win from the Giants last week. Cull, why don't you let us know how they did this week?
Yeah,
I could let you know.
They did awful. They lost 38-7 to the Eagles. They were outscored and shut out 28-0 in the first half. I think they only had maybe 100-something yards of total offense, where the Eagles had probably 500, close to 500 yards of total offense. It was just a total ass swimming. I had some cautious optimism going into the game. Said, they played the Eagles twice, third time playing them, maybe they can pull off the upset here. The Eagles, didn't have the confidence, the momentum, but...
they had momentum.
Well, they were off a week, so I was like, maybe that'll hurt them, but nah, it didn't matter. They...
I meant during the game.
During the game, I meant going into the game. Because the Giants won last week, the Eagles didn't play, so I was like, all right, we got some momentum, but... Nah, none of that mattered. The Giants were outplayed, outcoached, outmanned, just outknifed,
outsorted.
They were out everything. Then their season came to an end. But gonna end it on a slightly happy note. The 2022 Giants season overall is a success. They were supposed to win only 3 or 4 games the whole year. Supposed to be a bottom tier team. They ended up winning 9 games, winning a game in the playoffs for the first time since 2011. Being a top 8 team in the playoffs, not an easy thing to do, so overall it's a success, but yeah, yesterday's game was just awful. I was very happy I didn't take off work or watch it at a bar. I was actually at work during the game, so I guess it stung a little less that I wasn't, sitting down committed to watching it, which, originally I'd rather have been, but probably the best I did it, because I would have been screaming and probably a lot more depressed and upset about the game.
All right.
But that's my sports talk.
And to all you D-gens out there, I can't speak for all of you, but I could speak for a couple friends of mine. Some money was lost that night.
Yes, some money was lost.
So to everyone out there hurting in their wallet department, hearts out to you.
Well, next we have underrated shout-outs. Today we just thought, because we've been talking about Band of Brothers, we should talk about a lot of the underrated actors at the time who have now become much bigger actors. I have 2 categories. One is movie actors who have become, I would say, massive now. Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Tom Hardy.
Yep.
Yes. top build guys.
Like we talked about earlier,
We
all
mentioned
in Sony Marvel now.
Let's do what would be your favorite movie that each of those guys are in, real quick.
I haven't seen it fully, but James McAvoy does a pretty good job in that Split movie.
Yeah,
Word,
Split. I was gonna say, yeah, Split. It was one of. It's a really well done.
Michael Fassbender. I don't really know. I don't think I've seen a ton of movies besides like the Marvel ones, besides which people don't see very well. But I thought it was an okay movie based on the video game Assassin's Creed.
I haven't seen it.
He did a decent job, even though the movie wasn't
the writing was
well.
probably shit, but
he did what he did.
He did what he could with the writing. Yeah. Word.
And Tom Hardy. I mean, the only one I can think of right now is Venom, just off the top of my head.
That's
really?
Tom Hardy movie.
Really?
Well,
What about
one.
Bane?
Bro, he's in a lot of shit.
I know, but off the top of my head, I just can't think of like a ton.
Well, he for one thing, he's a big character in Peaky Blinders now. I know that's his big claim to fame. But obviously, he's done a lot of roles. He's been Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. He's been Venom. Obviously, he's.
Venom.
I believe he was in like a Terminator movie at one point.
Not sure, to be honest.
No, you're thinking of the guy that looks like him. I know what you're talking
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sam Worthington. That was it.
That's the Avatar guy.
No, it's not him. It's the other one that looks like him.
There's another Sam Worthington.
No, here while you guys are talking, I'll look him up.
Give us your favorite Tom Hardy movie, and then favorite McAvoy and Fassbender.
I don't know. There's like a. I know as soon as I give an answer, I'm gonna be pissed because like a better answer came later. You know.
That's
So
fine.
I'll
Go off the rip.
yeah, off the rip.
One of our original.
Yeah,
names.
off the cuff.
The guy you were thinking of, Tom? Jai Courtney.
I feel
Oh
he doesn't really look that much.
no, he
Yeah.
was not in. He was not in. That's
He
not
was
the
in
one
the
I'm talking.
Terminator- he was in
You're
the
talking.
Terminator
I'm talking
movie.
about Salvation though.
That's the one you're talking about?
Belay that. Fucking what were you?
Favorite Tom Hardy movie? Just go.
All right,
Don't think
Tom
about it
Hardy
too much.
movie. I
It
would.
was Sam Worthington. Sorry.
Fucker. I would say for my favorite Tom Hardy movie, gotta go with fucking Venom.
All right.
Gotta go get him Venom.
Same answer.
So
Venom,
it's a
you
you
can't
know,
eat Venom?
just fuck it. You know, it's the
Alright.
stupidest one.
Nah, it's fine. I've never seen it, so I don't have any opinion of it.
It's fun.
Word. Do you have a Fassbender?
That's all I will say about it. It's fun and go for nothing else.
Do you have a Fassbender or McAvoy choice?
Fassbender, it's gotta go with Inglourious Bastards.
Word.
Oh, I forgot he was in that.
Word. That's
Yeah,
choice.
that's his most iconic role to me. Just that he owns that entire scene. And you guys know what I'm talking about. The bar scene.
Yes.
In that movie where he's up against the major, the German major.
Yep.
That whole scene, he just fucking kills it. That scene makes the movie.
What about
And
Michael?
the other one, McAvoy. At the same time, you know, I've only really seen him in the X-Men movies and Split, and like I said, Split was a fucking amazing movie. I really enjoyed Split just from his performance alone.
Word.
But in the X-Men movies, he plays a great Professor X. I'll say that.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
what about you?
So I'm going to start with Fassbender actually because I recently watched a movie with him in a leading role and it's Steve Jobs and he does a fucking fantastic job playing him. He's an Irish guy, Irish actor, and the accent, like the voice he does of Steve Jobs is spot on. The people said he didn't really look like him, but I feel like he looks exactly like him in that movie. He's got like this complex relationship with his daughter that they go into.
And Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen.
I saw a clip of that.
Yeah,
So-
Seth Rogen did it. And anyway, he just absolutely kills it in that role. One of my favorite writers, Aaron Sorkin, wrote that movie. And if you've never seen an Aaron Sorkin written movie, shame on you because they are fucking fantastic. The dialogue that he writes is just so fucking fire.
Shame on me, I guess. And I don't think I'm familiar with any.
Have you seen The Social Network?
There you go. I haven't seen any. That's your big movie, right? That's
one
your
of my
boy.
favorite movies of all time.
I'm good. I haven't seen it either.
All right. Well, I'm not going to go into them anymore. But anyway, Michael Fassbender is going to be Steve Jobs. Tom Hardy, I'm going to go Inception.
Haven't seen.
Word.
Wanna see.
Nolan movie. Very good. Tom Hardy doesn't really play the biggest role in that movie, but
Oh, Mad Max. He was in the new Mad Max.
I've only seen
That's
the old
true.
Man Max.
Yeah.
I'm changing my Mad Max.
That's a better choice.
That's a better choice.
Yeah, man.
I'm going to stick with Inception for Tom Hardy. And McAvoy, I honestly can't think of a movie I've seen them. I haven't seen any of the new X-Men. You gotta give
I'm
me
looking
one.
them up right now. I'm cheating.
I got it.
I should have one, but I haven't seen those X-Men movies. I haven't seen Split. I've heard he's amazing in it, but
those are his biggest ones. Split and Glass, which are same
yeah,
movie.
I know it's the same.
Atonement. Oh, he was in chapter 2 of it.
He was in Capone.
Haven't seen it.
But apparently a good movie.
He's in this great movie called The Last Jedi. This looks pretty good.
Oh, he had like a guest appearance on that.
Oh, word.
He's in Narnia, your favorite movie series.
Oh,
Yes,
baby.
sir. Yes. James McAvoy plays Mr. Tumnus. Is that his name of the movie?
And all the fans of this
It
series,
doesn't say it. I just
stay
read it.
tuned for episode 1000 when they
Yes.
eventually
Okay. So
debut.
James
Narnia.
McAvoy, my favorite role of him is as Mr. Tumnus in Narnia. I'm a big Narnia
He's
fan.
in. Oh,
Episode
Yes.
1000 is
I was
when
gonna, it says
So,
Deadpool 2
Narnia.
also. Which I know why. It's because in Deadpool 2 they have that one scene where they show the new Fox X-Men, like, and they shut the door. So it's like a cameo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that barely counts. Okay, so I went Steve Jobs, Fassbender, Hardy, Inception. Hardy's definitely an Inception. You confirm that for me?
Let me
Like
get-
99%.
Let me pull out the James McAvoy
And then
creds.
McAvoy, I'm gonna go Narnia.
Alright,
He's
I'm
in
going-
Narnia?
I'm going.
Mr. Tumnus, baby.
I'm going McAvoy,
Mr.
Split,
Tumnus.
Tom Hardy, Mad Max, Fassbender. I'm gonna stick with Assassin's Creed just because
Word. I respect it. I respect it.
All right, and then our next segment is gonna be Tom's Thinking Corner. So Tom, what do you have? Let's keep it kind of serious because of the episode we have.
Yes.
We've been going on a pretty serious route. What do you got for us today?
Alrighty. I saw something that was surprisingly serious today. I was on TikTok earlier, you know, as you do when you're bored and you're going through your day. But I was on TikTok and I saw something. It was somebody reinterpreting the Icarus story. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Icarus. Basically, dumb motherfucker flies up into the sky, burns his wings off, flies down. The end. But basically, somebody reinterpreted what we know that story, the message of that story to be, and I thought it gave a very, very interesting, very hopeful, maybe even inspirational message for everyone out there. But I think it might fit with the topic at hand. But the point of the Icarus story is not that he was a fool who flew too high and got burnt. The point was that while he was falling down, finding out that he failed, it mattered nothing to him because he was happy at the attempt. He was happy that he could fly so close and feel the warmth of the sun so close to his body that he got that close to begin with. And if he didn't try, he would never understand that joy. So to anyone out there, you know, worried, nervous, or afraid to take a chance and do your dreams, just, you know, take a shot. Maybe you too will burn down and fall out of the sky.
Yeah, I like that message. I would say that also this might not be the most common take, but dying isn't always sad. If you're doing something that you're passionate about, if you're doing something that you love,
Absolutely.
dying isn't always sad.
I think for some people, death can be the culmination of life.
Yes, it can be,
You know?
almost beautiful in some ways.
Yeah, I
More
finished
poetic.
the last page type thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, boys. So let's wrap
Yeah.
up personal takes on 1 through 5. What'd you guys think?
I think overall, I think I'd argue. I think I have a little bit more of a favor for the earlier episodes than the later. I think that I just for the kind of stories that you get to hear within the show, I do feel like they give you different takes that you wouldn't normally think about in war. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I think, I don't know, it's hard for me to say vividly right now, but I think I like 6 to 10 slightly better, solely because episode 5, the one that Sean just went over, is my least favorite episode on the show, and not that I dislike it in any way, I just found the middle of the episode to be a little bit bland. That's just my take on the episode.
Most miniseries, there's gonna be at least one or two.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
You know,
And
the
so-
fact that they could keep it down to that level goes to show the quality of writing on this.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So 5 would probably be my least favorite. So because of that, I'm going to say 1 to 5. I like a little bit less than 6 to 10. But yeah, no, I like I like all the characters, the scenery, the costumes, the truth in the battles that they've been through. Everything about it's been super well executed so far, and I'm excited to go over 6 to 10 next week.
Right on. My take, I mean, watching the show 4 times now, still just really love what they do. I think it's great how they're able to focus on so many different points that Easy Company, fought in, trained in, all the different places they were. And I think even though some gets more times than other, they're able to do it really like tastefully, where they focus on very specific events that had major impacts on Winters. They're able to focus on other characters aside from him and important points with them, but also see Winters' perspective, keeping him as the main character. And I just think 1 through 5, 1 definitely really introduces us really well to the men and prepares us to see what they're about to jump into. And 2 through 5 just really do D-Day and Operation Market, the way Easy fought them, it does them a good service. So, last thing, we're going to do a quick hitters.
Quick hitters!
For tonight. Our quick hitters for tonight that I have for you guys is, what part of history would you say you know the most about? And then follow up after that, what part of history do you want to know more about?
What part of history do I know the most about?
If you want, I can start.
I was gonna say I need like a minute to think about
Tom
that.
definitely needs a minute to think about this.
All right, word. Well, you start us off, and I'll make sure that Tom gets it in no time.
I would say, obviously,
I know
the
your
thing
answer.
I know the most about probably in history is World War II, World War I, like the early 1910s till probably like 1945, like end of World War II. And I also know a pretty decent amount about the American Revolution, that time frame. Something I would want to know a little bit more about is probably the time in between the Revolution and World War I, not only in America, but like a lot of the stuff that was going on in Europe. Like, I know a little bit about the French Revolution, but like aside from that, I want to know like things that were going on in Europe during that time. I just feel like that'd be kind of interesting.
There was a lot of what's called like the philosophers and stuff coming out with shit during that time, and the scientists, Galileo, and people who got killed.
When like technology started getting
there's a
more
lot of
advanced.
A lot of shit that happened, but a lot of it's like science or philosophy related, not like war or like straight like history related, which I feel like is more your alley. So it makes sense that you would know less about
it.
Yeah. Tom, would you like to go next, or do you want me to rip it? I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say that the time in history I know the most about would probably be honestly like revolutionary time. Around that time, I know a lot about our founding fathers and what was going down at that time, and just all the inceptions of our American history. I think all that stuff is pretty cool stuff. I also feel like I know a decent amount about World War II. Definitely going to be one. If I make it to like an older age, be one of those guys watching those World War II documentaries, by myself.
I already do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, kind of already teetering on the line of doing that. So definitely know a decent amount about World War II. But yeah, a time in history that I would like to know more about would be I don't really know exactly what to call it, but like frontier times.
So like after when America was being settled more.
Like the gold
like Lewis
rush,
and Clark.
Like those.
That's kind of I would kind of agree. That's like part of where I was.
So
I gave a very
West.
big time.
The Wild West.
I gave a very big time frame.
Yeah,
that's
I want to know more about them
because
too.
everyone just portrays Wild West towns, and I feel like it's so.
It's just like the desert.
They don't tell you anything about that time.
It's so just like bland and surface level, and I feel like there's got to be more to it. Like it can't just be saloons and duels.
You can shoot each other and go.
Yeah. I mean, there's like cool stuff about like any kind of like basic Western, like obviously, but I don't know. That's
they never go over the rules. It's like it's whatever.
That's a time in history I feel like I'd like to know some more about.
All right, right on, Tom.
It's a period of history I'd like to see.
What period of history do you know the most about first? Or would you say you know the most about?
I would say I know the most about like the 2000s era.
So
because
I lived the present day.
Because I lived through it, so like I got a little bit of firsthand knowledge, even like records written down by myself. But I would say probably, in all seriousness,
I was gonna say like Greek mythology. I feel like you're really into.
I wouldn't. I'm getting into Greek mythology.
Into it, yeah.
Okay, so that would be what you want to know more about.
Yeah,
I think he's already doing that though.
I mean,
well, he is.
Yeah,
he's taking part in that.
You know, I learned a lot about like New York. So I learned about like 1970s, 80s New York. I love the crime stuff, so I know a lot about crime.
Where I took a very broad on what I want to know more about, Tom is taking a very condensed on what he knows about.
Yes, sir.
All right, right on. I respect it.
It's different.
All right. All right.
My expertise is more on local history. It's not like big history. It's usually on like smaller third parties, what they were doing at different times.
All right, right on. So no ratings tonight because we didn't finish Band of Brothers. Yep. We're gonna be giving the ratings next episode when we do Band of Brothers 6 through 10. So that's gonna wrap it up from here tonight. From Tom, Colin, and Sean. Thank you guys for listening to Late to the Game. Don't be late to the next episode, and we will see you guys next time.
Peace out.